Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
Hi, I'm Bob from Crane Appliance. Since 1983, as a family-owned company, our goal has been simple: to give our neighbors of the Cape and Islands a great shopping experience. Rest easy knowing our professional team will listen to your needs and help you pick out the perfect appliances. We'll take care of everything throughout the sale, delivery, and installation process. And we even have our own in-house service department. Crane Appliance, we call the Cape and Islands home.
Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by Meganet Communications. Meganet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
Okay, I'd like to open the Select Board meeting of Monday, July 25th, 2022. It is 5:30, and I would entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiation with non-personnel Julian Suso, Town Manager, and MGL C30A, Section 21A, 3, and to discuss strategy with respect to potential litigation with Julian M. Suso, Town Manager.
I would second that motion with just a minor edit of non-union personnel.
Thank you.
Roll call.
Brown, aye.
Patterson, aye.
Scott Price, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Zelensky, aye.
And we will return to open session here in this room at 7 o'clock. I'd like to open the meeting of the Falmouth Select Board. It's Monday, July 25th, 2022. We are returning to open session from executive session, and in that executive session, the board voted to authorize special counsel to take further action with respect to settlement negotiations with Julian Suso, and this was a unanimous vote. So I would ask again that people silence your cell phones, and if you are personally taping this meeting, please notify the chair. And I'm going to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Patterson, would you like to read the proclamation for Eagle Scout Nicholas Sanzali?
It'd be a pleasure. I don't
Thank you.
see them here.
Yeah, they sent notice they couldn't make it
Couldn't
this
make it,
evening.
okay. Whereas Nicholas Sanzali Jr. of Boy Scout Troop 40 has successfully completed the qualifications for the rank of Eagle Scout, a rigorous and demanding process that teaches patience, perseverance, and teamwork and requires strong goal setting. And whereas Nicholas Sanzali Jr. met these challenges with aplomb and shall be recognized as an outstanding representative of his family, his troop, and Falmouth. And whereas the Boy Scouts of America, long acknowledged for building fine citizens, calls for a special court of honor to award its highest symbol of achievement to those who complete this rank. And whereas Nicholas Sanzali Jr. is now an Eagle Scout with all its rank and privilege. Now therefore, we, Nancy R. Taylor, Angela Scott Price, Samuel H. Patterson, Douglas C. Brown, and Scott Zielinski, as the Select Board of the Town of Falmouth, do hereby declare and proclaim Nicholas Sanzali Jr. as Eagle Scout in Falmouth.
Second?
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Mr.
Yes.
Sanzali. Since he's not here, should we just briefly read what his Eagle Scout
Certainly.
was?
Oh, we should, but, yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is a letter from Lynn Briggs, Troop 40, Boy Scouts of America. She wrote, Dear Ms. Taylor, Nicholas Sanzali Jr., Boy Scout Troop 40 of Falmouth, Massachusetts, sponsored by St. Barnabas Episcopal Church, has progressed through the ranks of scouting and has achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. Nicholas is a good citizen and a credit to his community and nation. Here's a statement from Nicholas about his Eagle Project and what scouting has done for him. Nicholas says, for my Eagle Scouting project, I built 3 benches and placed them along the handicap-accessible Coonamessett Greenway Heritage Trail off John Parker Road in Falmouth, Mass. I also built and installed 3 birdhouses in the old cranberry bogs to allow for small birds to inhabit the area. And scouting has taught me a couple of ideals that will stay with me for years to come, which are how to be a leader and how to manage and commit my time to important projects. Being a part of scouting was and is an important part of my life, and it has taught me so much about life and how to present myself.
That's good enough.
So this is it. So thank you, Nicholas. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Any recognitions from the board?
I have a appreciation for the water department crew that was out there on Saturday afternoon fixing that water main break on the Route 28, the West Falmouth Highway portion of Route 28. And they had their own flaggers. They ran I had to go by there a couple times, and that was a hot day, and they were working steadily. And the number of guys that came in on a Saturday to work there, that was pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Mr.
along that
Patterson?
same vein, the Parks Department, we had a tree in our neighborhood that went down at about 10:30 p.m. And called it into the police. The police department showed up. It covered the road entirely and blocked a person's lane, so in case of emergency, it would have been entirely impossible for them to get out of their house. We have another way of getting out of our neighborhood, but they came, and by 11:15, they had it entirely cleaned up, pushed to the side. And I shouldn't say cleaned up, but out of the way and pushed to the side, and then they came back the very next day. So we certainly appreciated it. It was a timely help, and especially since they obviously had to be aroused out of bed, and probably a lot of them would get up early the next morning, and maybe we're a little bit slow the next day, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Any other recognitions? Okay, announcements. I have an announcement on the anniversary of ADA. So on behalf of the Select Board, I would like to recognize that tomorrow, July 26, 2022, is the 32nd anniversary of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans with disabilities by reducing barriers, changing perceptions, and increasing full participation in community life. We celebrate this legacy with the people of Falmouth and the many organizations in Falmouth and throughout the country that work to bring the promise of hope and freedom envisioned by the passage of the ADA to reality.
Good one.
Other announcements?
I have one, Madam Chair. This Wednesday, July 27th at 1 p.m. is the annual Ambrose Gerald Jr. Lecture. Dr. Ambrose Gerald has been a resident of Falmouth for almost 40 years. He retired from NOAA in Woods Hole, and in 2017, after he retired, the Woods Hole Diversity Advisory Committee created this lecture in his honor where we talk about diversity and inclusion in the STEM field, specifically of what we can do in our community to be more diverse and inclusive. So that will be at 1 o'clock on Wednesday on Zoom, and I encourage anyone who is interested to learn more about one of our local residents and to hear the lecture to join.
Awesome, thank you. Any other announcements?
Yes, Water Superintendent Cahal O'Brien is here, and he wants to say a few words about the state of the drought and our plea to residents to conserve water. So Cahal, if you could come to the podium, please.
Thank you very much for your time this evening, Select Board. We just wanted to remind everyone of all of our customers, we do have an odd even water ban in effect. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays are for odd houses, and Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays are for even houses. It's the water till about 8 or 9 a.m., just till the morning. The reason we wanted to ask for your help in spreading the message is we're going through an incredibly hot and dry period. The state's declared a mild drought in the Cape. It was normal up until a week or two ago, and we're monitoring it now daily. Our supplies are stable and adequate, but our flow demand is the highest we've seen it, period. Thank goodness the economy's, around here anyways, people are coming back from COVID, but they're using a lot of water, particularly lawn irrigation, and we really, really ask the residents to please not just honor the odd even ban, but to minimize the amount they're watering if at all possible. That's the same water that we use to supply fire protection and personal use like sanitation and bathrooms and stuff. And if we're competing in the morning for that irrigation water, we're in a threat level because we're running on our pumps. We're having trouble filling the tanks until we get to midday. On Saturday, and thank you for the kind words, our staff did a great job, we agree, but that took us some time to recover. We never fully recovered the tanks on Saturday. So we do not want to come back and ask for a full all-out ban, but if the weather does not cooperate, we may have to for fire protection and personal water use because we need to protect that flow. We're hoping the weather doesn't look like it's cooperating tonight, but it wants to. And if the residents can just, call on them to just help us out a little bit in the next month. And it isn't that we're trying to be selfish. We get revenue for irrigation, but we want to share that water responsibly so we can make sure we have a safe, healthy summer. We're right in the middle of it in the 50-yard line, and we've been in peak demand now more days than not in the month of July. So we're putting out a lot of water all at the same time. So it's not an emergency, but we just wanted to ask for your help. We've sent out alerts. We've updated the website. We're going to be going out, doing some other work, trying to talk to the public, and we sent out an informal, if you will, electronic press release this afternoon, and anything you can do to support that effort we'd greatly appreciate because we're hoping we can keep an odd-even scheme, which gets everybody a little bit, but we don't want to go back. We've had to go to the extreme a couple of years ago. Nobody was happy, and ultimately, it's only a Band-Aid. So we just please ask for your support with that, with the odd-even ban, and if people can use as little water as possible. We do know a lot of people are concerned. We share it. They're concerned for their private property, but if it gets so dry, it's going to go that way anyways, and no amount of irrigation is going to help. It's just Mother Nature doing her thing. So thank you for your time, and if you have any questions.
Could I just get a clarification on the, so I think most people are under the impression when it's odd even, it means if their street number is 199, they can water on the odd days, and I don't think most people know about the Monday.
Right, we switched that up that's a good question. We switched it up last year to make it easier for the automated systems, because most of the automated systems, it's days of the week. So traditionally, in many communities, you have to go in the basement or have your irrigation person help you to reset it, because each month the days will switch. We set it up so you can only have to set it once. So April, May, you go in, you set, I do Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and regardless of the number of the day of the week. So when you go from July to August and that shuffles the days, you still get that consistent water. We talked to the irrigation companies last year. They agreed with us it was more consistent in symmetry, better for the lawns, and it was easier for the homeowner because they didn't have to become an engineer every month. Because a lot of times in the past, they'll start the summer honoring the odd even because the house number, because they'd call and say, well, I'm 111, can I water tomorrow? But by the next month, that's shuffled, and eventually it's impractical because some people might say, well, I'm only down the Cape a couple days a week, or I may be busy. They don't want to have to manage it. So we said, set it and forget it and pick your 3 days. And if your question helps the public understand it, that might help us a lot.
Okay.
We have noticed that today's our Monday, it's our best day of the week. I just left the treatment plant while I was waiting to come here, and we've already recovered for the day. So we're perfectly fine right now, and the cloudiness is helping. But yeah, if people can set it by the day of the week, and if they can cut an hour or two off, that'd really help us. Because we see that surge at 3, 4 in the morning, and it roars right until about 8 o'clock.
Right.
So we know when it's coming on. And it isn't that we're against irrigation, it's that traditional irrigation systems all open at once. And so if you think of like the fire sprinklers here, that's the same way they work. So when all these lawns are going on, it's as if everyone's lawn's on fire. And that water, we want to have water available for actual fire protection and then the people showering and stuff in the morning. And so until that, and everyone's on at once. So it's like everyone's trying to run out the door at once.
So odd is Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
Yep.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and even is Wednesday, Friday, Sunday.
Okay.
It's kind of like a Falmouth adjustment because on Mondays we get a lot of turnover of our residents. And so Mondays used to be the worst day for us.
Okay.
And we don't want businesses to open up on a Monday and have no water pressure. So Monday's the, timeout day.
I got you.
And that way, when there's a lot of turnover and a lot of our commercial customers are cleaning a lot of hotels and stuff, they're not competing with the irrigation. So that allows them to get full bore and full pressure. The previous tenants leave, the new people check in, and that seems to work really, really well. Worked really well today. So, but if we can squeeze them on those other days, we just don't want to run into a situation. We've been very fortunate, thanks to the Falmouth Fire Department. We've had several fires this year so far. It's been hot, it's been dry. There's a lot of people in town, there's a lot of traffic. We don't want to have water pressure become part of the challenge that they face when they're trying to protect the property.
Thank you, Cahal.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Any other announcements? Okay. Public comment. Public comment may be made on routine matters not on the agenda this evening. Comments are limited to 2 minutes. Please introduce yourself. Since the matter has not been included on the agenda, the Select Board may not participate in discussion of the topic. It is not appropriate to use the public comment period to comment on any person's reputation, character, physical condition or mental health, disciplinary matters, or civil or criminal charges. Comments about job performance and decisions made are permissible. So the Select Board will not engage in any dialogue on anything brought to us during public comment. Is anyone here for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will go to the Town Manager's preliminary report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight you have interviews for the Zoning Board of Appeals. There are 2 candidates. There are 3 open positions, 2 full-member positions, and 1 associate position. Suzanne Murphy is seeking reappointment. She was appointed June 13th to fill a vacant seat, and the term for that seat expired 2 weeks later. We are also interviewing, again, we're revisiting the Cape Light Compact appointment. Scott Mueller was the only applicant for the position in June, and he was appointed as the sole representative at that time. Subsequently, he learned that the incumbent, Matt Patrick, wished to continue to represent the town on the Cape Light Compact, and Mr. Mueller wrote to the board suggesting that he be appointed as an alternate so Mr. Patrick can be appointed as the primary representative. And you have that letter in your packet. We have a public hearing tonight to rebuild an existing dock at 31 Edgewater Drive West. That has been approved by the Conservation Commission, and town staff have not identified any concerns with respect to navigation or shellfish. On your business agenda tonight, we have a report from the Recreation Committee. That's the annual meeting with the Recreation Committee. And then a multi-hazard mitigation plan update. This report is required to maintain eligibility for grant funding from FEMA following a natural disaster. The updated plan is also required for Falmouth private property owners to benefit from the community rating system, which provides property insurance or flood insurance discounts because of the town's participation in that program and the mitigation plan and measures that the town is taking to address those hazards. So for that update, the Woods Hole Group is the consulting engineering firm that was hired to work with the town to prepare that report. Leslie Fields is the project manager for Woods Hole Group. She will be making the presentation. Jennifer Lincoln, our conservation administrator, had a prior commitment tonight and is unable to be here. That plan, by the way, is posted, and I'm sure you'll hear it from Leslie Fields. It is posted on the website, and public comments can be sent via email, and the address is listed on the website. We then have a report from the Cape Cod Commission, the annual meeting with the town's appointed representative. The Cape Cod Commission, as the board is aware, is the regional land use planning, economic development, and regulatory agency for Barnstable County. Next on the business agenda is a fire staffing discussion. I will have a presentation that reviews the Select Board's fire station staffing policies and report on the status of our efforts to achieve those goals. And we will be announcing a town meeting schedule. That's the last item on your business agenda. And then on the consent agenda, all of the licenses and administrative orders have been reviewed by staff, and I recommend approval.
Thank you. Okay. I don't know if we have everyone here for the committee interviews. Is Matt Patrick here? No. Scott Mueller? We have, I know that Suzanne Murphy is held up because she is in a meeting. So I'm not sure that we can take anything out of order. We could perhaps go through the consent agenda. And certainly on this agenda, it says that the chair, at the discretion of the chair, I can take anything out of order. So I think it might be wise to go through the consent agenda and then we'll do our interviews. Is the board in agreement with that? Okay, I will read the issues on the consent agenda. If anybody on the board has any questions or comments, please hold the item. Number 1, licenses. Approve application for a change of management agreement of a wine and malts package store license, OSJL Spirits LLC, doing business as Ocean State Job Lot located on 50 T-Ticket Highway. Application for two special one-day wine and malt liquor license, Quissit Yacht Club, H12 Championship Reception and Dinner, 70 Quissit Harbor Ave, Friday, 7/29/22, and Saturday, 7/30/22. And number 3, approve application for a special one-day wine and malt liquor license, Woods Hole Historical Museum, Oyster Talk and Tasting, 579 Woods Hole Road, Friday, 8/26/22. Okay, hearing no holds, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous?
Madam Chair, I would
Yes.
say we just interviewed Suzanne Murphy, just seems like a couple of weeks ago or whatever it was. I would move that we appoint her to the zoning board unless you feel we should wait.
Second, but you need to state the term ending.
Okay, I think
27?
we do have someone here that I would like to interview, and then I think we can do both, because I agree with you. I'm not sure we need to re-interview.
All right, fine.
As long as that's. So let's go ahead and take Zoning Board of Appeals. We're going to hold on Suzanne Murphy. Mark Finneran, are you here?
Good evening, and thank you for considering my application.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about your desire to be on the ZBA, Mr. Finneran?
Well, I've been on a committee for the last 6 years, and I had done what I set out to do. I mean, in 2012, I passed an article in town meeting to hire a solid waste manager, which we finally did last year, and that's going nicely. And there were 2 people waiting in queue that had decades of experience in solid waste, and I thought that it was would be prudent if I stepped aside and allowed them in, because they have experience that I just do not have. And I thought I was going to kind of do nothing for a while. And then I watched the interviews and I saw this. I've always had kind of an interest in it. I've attended meetings. My friend was the chairman for a long time. And I speak with him regularly. So, and when I went to the Falmouth Heights Mara Vista Neighborhood Association pizza party, I was approached by 7, 8, or 9 people that all suggested that I should apply, and I had been kind of half thinking about it myself. I basically did nothing for about a week. It wasn't enough, so here I am. I think I'm a good fit for it. I mean, it's the taxpayer, the applicants, whatever kind of last line of relief before they have to, go to court or whatever else. And I'm pretty familiar with Falmouth neighborhoods and whatever, and I think I can be a fair and honest arbiter. I have actually myself passed an amendment to a zoning bylaw for the accessory dwelling units in sewered areas, and it just interests me more than I really knew that it did.
Questions from the board? Thank you.
Yeah, Mark, I'm not really familiar with where your position is on affordable housing, but the ZBA stands as the reviewer of all comprehensive permits for those kinds of projects. How do you feel about that? I mean,
My father was the chairman of the Housing Authority in the state of Vermont for 15 or 18 years. I have kind of a history supporting affordable housing. I mean, the bylaw that I mentioned has resulted in, the construction of I don't know how many, but it's more than a dozen just in the Mara Vista sewer area alone. Sure. I mean, everyone needs a place to live.
Question?
I don't have questions. I'm pretty familiar with Mr. Finneran. I think he could probably handle it.
Do you have a question?
I have 2.
Go for it.
Mr. Finneran, you read plans, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you have a background in building?
Yeah, I have a college background in civil engineering, and I've pretty much been in the building industry in one form or another all my life. I mean, we owned motels and restaurants growing up, so I mean, by the time I was 10, I was better than my father at it, and I've just been really at this.
And you understand that it's quite time-consuming to
Yeah,
manufacture.
it is, and I know you got to make it around town a lot, but I'm around town all the time anyway. I know the site visits can be time-consuming, but I would also find them interesting. I can't recite for you at the moment the entire bylaws, although I have them here and I've started to study them, but I can guarantee you that I'm willing to put the time in. I think I've demonstrated that in the past, that I have the ability to do the homework and to retain, fair amounts of data.
I appreciate the answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm going to move to appoint Mark Finneran to a full member with a term ending 6/30/27.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second?
I was thinking about offering, that's why I tried to move the other one, because she's already on the board and she's got a ton of zoning board experience. I was going to move Suzanne Murphy for the 27 term, but I'll defer to your motion.
I have a
Well,
motion
we've got a
and a
motion
second.
on the floor, so.
Yeah, okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I won't disappoint you.
Thank you.
Bye.
We won't let you. Okay, do you want to make a motion on Suzanne Murphy, Mr. Brown?
I do. I guess I would motion that we appoint Suzanne Murphy to the term ending 6/30/2025.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Okay, I do see Matt Patrick. Nice to see you. And is Scott Mueller here?
I'm not sure he was aware he needed to come because he's already appointed. and
Exactly.
Wrote a
it's
letter.
gonna be-
Yes, agreed. So do you want to,
I would make a motion that we appoint Matt Patrick to the Cape Light Compact and the term ending 6/30/24, I guess.
Second Mr. Brown's motion.
okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick.
Thank you. Would you like to come up and say anything?
Well, I just want to thank the board for your flexibility and understanding. It's been a tough spring for me. You can tell. I'm still, it's going to take a while before I can not speak like a pirate. But I'm looking forward to another term on the Cape Light Compact. I was there at the beginning, at the inception, at writing the legislation. I understand it very well. And Maggie Downey has said that she would like me there for this next push to get some of our programs through the Department of Public Utilities. There's not a lot of institutional knowledge left on the Cape Light Compact, so she's recruited me to come back in. So thank you very much for the vote.
And thanks to
Appreciate it.
Thanks to
Thank
Mr.
you
Mueller
for
for
your
being
willingness.
gracious as well.
And thanks for your many years in public service to all of us. Appreciate it, Matt.
So with that, I would also move, if I could, to appoint Scott Mueller as the alternate with the same term ending 6/30/2024.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we just have another minute before we get started with our public hearing. So, Ms. Scott Price, would you like to read the hearing notice?
Gladly. In a minute? Or can I read it now?
I think you can go ahead and read it now.
Okay.
Seconds away.
Yes.
Okay.
Read very slowly.
The Falmouth Select Board will hold a public hearing under Section 240-14.8 Wetlands Regulations of the zoning bylaws of the Town of Falmouth on Monday, July 25th, 2022, at 7:30 PM in the Select Board Meeting Room, Falmouth Town Hall, 59 Town Hall Square, on the application of Stephen Proya for permission to rebuild the existing licensed dock located at 317 Edgewater Drive West, East Falmouth, Massachusetts. Area affected is Eel Pond. Interested parties may review the file on this hearing at the office of the Select Board. Per order of the Select Board, publication dates Friday, July 8th, 2022, and Friday, July 15th, 2022, Falmouth Enterprise. Did I say the name right?
Yes, you did. Thank you, members of the board. For the record, Mike Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. I'm here tonight seeking permission to rebuild an existing licensed and permitted dock. I have an aerial photo I wanted to share with you to just give you an overview. I've highlighted in a red cloud where this existing dock is. And you can see from the area, it's in a developed neighborhood on the western shore, on Seacoast Shores. There are several other docks in and around the neighborhood. We've been before Conservation Commission and received a favorable order of conditions to allow the dock to be reconstructed. The plan I can share with you shows the property. It's fully developed with a house. It's at the intersection of Fairfield Drive. Here is where the existing dock is. And the existing dock consists of an elevated walkway that's supported by pipes, a ramp, and a float. And the homeowner is basically trying to make it more resilient to storms by replacing the pipes with more stable and substantial timber pilings. Those pilings and new walkway structure will allow the number of penetrations into the bottom to be reduced because the piles can be spanned over a longer distance. They are slightly bigger in diameter, but there'll be less of them than the pipes. If you look closely on this profile, you will see here the existing walkway is much lower. There's no public access along the shoreline. It's very close to the surface of a salt marsh. So the new structure will be elevated above the salt marsh. It'll be fitted with light penetrating decking called through-flow decking. And it'll be elevated high enough so that there now is public access along the shoreline. One other improvement is the end of the dock on the landward side currently terminates right in a dune. The idea now is to add one more section that would bridge the dune and allow stairs to come down, and hopefully the dune will restore itself over time. There'll be no more foot traffic going through that part of the dune. The float at the end, there was a comment from an entity called Division of Marine Fisheries where they recommended that the float be fitted with float stops. So on lower tides, low tides, the float would have no opportunity to bottom out on the substrate. So the main goal is to rebuild it to make it more resilient to storms, and there are added environmental benefits to rebuilding it. Same width, length, and alignment, and the Conservation Commission has issued an order of conditions approving it. And I'm happy to take questions.
Questions from the board?
Oh, I had them all answered.
Looks like a good improvement to me.
I move that we close the hearing.
I was just going to say, I'd like to see if there's anyone from the public.
Sure, yes, please do. I'm
Is
sorry.
there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this? Okay, I'll take Mr. Patterson's motion to
I
close
move
the
to close the
hearing.
hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. And I'll move that we approve this application.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the application. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Madam Chair, I believe Ms. Murphy's here.
Yes,
We just appointed
you
you.
have been appointed. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We didn't think we needed to interview you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, and we were alerted to the fact that you had an executive session. All right, thanks. So you're all set. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to business. Report from the Recreation Committee. Mr. Brown, how are you? You have 15 minutes.
I think I'll make it. Good evening. My name is Robert Brown. I am the new chairman, I guess, returned to for the Recreation Committee. Sandy took a little break because she's going to do a little traveling, so I'm back at it again. First, Joe Olenek is here from the Recreation Department. He's the chair. He's the director. And his website statements for the Recreation Department says they're emphasizing a safe and healthy environment to provide sportsmanship, respect, responsibility, and teamwork while increasing positive self-esteem. I think I have a slideshow right here. And winning and losing is not as important as learning and fun for all. And at the next slide, you'll see our Joe here. And that's him right after throwing the first pitch at Little League this year. He was invited to the Little League complex for opening day as a result of the wonderful community preservation application that he put in. And they wanted to thank him and honor him on that day. And I can testify that Joe got the ball over the plate.
All right.
So, very good. And other members of the staff are Lindsay, she works the front desk. They have Adam as a program director, and Adam's been working there for how long, Joe? 5, 6 years, and he's been going there since he was a little boy. And then we have a new worker, Tracy Trotto, and she just started, and she's from Barnstable. And I believe that we have an office assistant that's out of work on an injury. And I made a mistake that there's a program director vacant, but our assistant director position is vacant, but I understand that it's in the works to someone to get hired, I hope. And I think that's an important position, and we'll get to that later. Our committee is made up of Sandy, our vice chair, who's here with us, and she's been with us for how many years? 32 years. And I think Patricia Morano's probably been with us for over 15 years, maybe? And she's on maybe her second round. And the rest of us have only been there for 6 or 5 years. Thomas Zine took the place of mid-term. He took the place of the late Walter Crotty. We have Richard Bowles and Scott Gelfie on the committee also, as well as Michael Halen, who's also on the school committee now. Our meetings are at 7 o'clock the second Wednesday of the month. We're meeting in person. We did Zoom during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic, and into the following months, and I think we did it very successfully. Other people may differ, and I thought it was great that people can Zoom in and meet with us and give their opinions, and I thought it went very well. I'd like to see some kind of policy, hopefully in the future, regarding hybrid, where persons from the DPW or our liaison, Ms. Scott Price, can Zoom in and not have to leave the comfort of wherever they may be, and not have to come to the meetings and just Zoom in. But I guess maybe that's in the future. We're hopefully for a policy like that. Our committee has a mission, and is simply to recommend policies to the select board regarding comprehensive year-round indoor recreation and outdoor recreation programs to meet the needs of children, youth, adults, and the elderly. And what a lot of people don't know and don't realize that the Recreation Department does a lot more than youth sports and pickleball scheduling. The Recreation Committee hosts science events, they host arts events, they host goofy children activities from small animals, snakes, little alligators, magic shows, all kinds of things that are a real hit for the kids, especially on school vacation weeks. And they have a very popular teen center where children can come and socialize and play games and enjoy life. And then we also have a very successful Princess Ball, where it was a father, guardian, daughter dance, highly attended. The photographs are amazing. And then there's the mother and son guardian dance. And then there's the big after prom, which our Sandy has been involved in for how many years? Since it started, right? 1995. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen it, but if you haven't seen it, you have to check it out. The whole Recreation Department transforms to whatever the theme is for the year, for that senior year. It's quite something. The volunteers are amazing, and the donations that come in from the businesses in town is fantastic too. On Friday afternoons, after school's out, many of Lawrence, many of Morse Pond, and many private school children empty out and walk over to the rec department. It could be anywhere from 65 to 100 children, over 100 children. And it can get a little bit overwhelming. It's very important they have full staff. It's very important that that this continue, and we'll get to the staffing later, but it's absolutely amazing the number of children that show up on a Friday. If If you look at their logbooks, it's outstanding. And especially in the spring, I had to go there for something to see Joe, and I was just flabbergasted how many children were there. Well, half days of school. I can see them marching by my office, and I know where they're all going. So I think it's important, and we'll get to it, that they have a good staff, assistant director, and plenty of help. We get to back to recreation staff and salary. There's been a lot of turnover at the recreation department, and it's not been good. It's kind of sad. We've lost a lot of good people. We've lost a lot of good people to other towns and to the recreation department. I think it's important that there's an assistant recreation director so people have a chance to grow. People can move into a new step in a salary. And a lot of our program directors, they have to work 2 jobs. They have to work 2 jobs because housing's tough. They have student loans. They're supposed to have an education, so education costs money, and they have loans afterwards. Then they have to find housing. The money that they're making just isn't enough. I'm sure that's across the board in all town departments, but we hope that the town can take a good look at this, the finance committee take a good look at this, the administration take a good look at this regarding salaries, and so that the program directors can at least stay for 5, maybe 10 years and grow into a job. We got turnover that sometimes they're not lasting 2-3 years. So I think it's important. The Recreation Committee highly recommends that there be a salary increase. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that as a result of the lack of staffing, they had to close the recreation center on Monday night. And they're hoping to have staff to open up again Monday night in September. Now, the Recreation Department also hosts groups at night. They use the conference rooms upstairs and some of the conference rooms downstairs. So at night, the Recreation Department can get quite busy. Even though there might not be sports activities, the rooms upstairs are being used. And a lot of us I think it was unanimous, members of the Recreation Committee, we thought there should be more than one person working at night at the Recreation Department, just for safety reasons and just in case someone gets hurt doing a recreation activity downstairs and they have to respond, so there'll be someone at least upstairs manning the front desk. In addition, the recreation, in regards to the recreation building, it's getting tired, it's getting a little older, and it probably needs a good inspection to see, what needs to be maintained, what needs to be fixed, how to maximize accessibility for those who are physically challenged. The roof apparently still has issues, and which affects the floor. There's money that's been budgeted for the floor for years. I think it's been funded, and the floor can't go in until the roof's fixed, I think, right? So in addition, the Recreation Department needs some new furniture, the office furniture as well as in the teen center. They had a recent upgrade, which was slip covers, which was nice, but it didn't solve the problem. We need to get some new furniture in there, and the office has furniture circa 1970. My next slide, I noticed on your agenda, it was noted that it was the anniversary of the American with Disability Act, and which feeds into one of my next issues. The Department of Public Works made some great renovations here at Trotting Park. If you see here, there's parking spaces down in the lower bowl of Upper Trotting Park Fields, where I believe there's 4 or 5 handicap spots. Beforehand, if you see over here, persons who are handicapped or in a wheelchair or on a cane or a walker or physically challenged would somehow have to roll or somehow find their way down this hill, and worse, try and find their way back up this hill. Now they have parking spaces down here, which is in my opinion, a long time coming, and I think it's great, and we're very grateful. Took some time, but there's more work that needs to be done at Trotting Park for accessibility, which goes into my next slide. accessibility is very important. You don't need accessibility until you need it. It's sort of like jumper cables, you know. Do I put them in my trunk or do I not put them in my trunk? Your battery goes dead, you don't have it in your trunk, you're out of luck. You go to a field, they don't have accessibility, you're out of luck if you're in a wheelchair. You need a walker, you're in a cane, or you just got out of surgery, or you just got out of the hospital. At Upper Trotting Park, there's 3 very large fields. There's supposed to be paths to those fields for accessibility. Someone in a wheelchair cannot get the field, I think 2, over the grass, over the humps, over the rivets. It's impossible. There's supposed to be paths. We can make Upper Trotting Park accessible with these paths. And so, you know, I'd like to leave that with, I'm hoping that the DPW can get to putting paths at Upper Trotting Park, because that field is much needed, and it's much used, and people suffer without it.
You're coming down to the 3-minute mark.
How many?
You got 3 minutes.
All right. And my next slide is the regulations regarding accessibility and accessible porta potties. In regards to next slide, the athletic master plan, which was funded by the community preservation in 2017, recognizes that we need 9 natural grass fields or 3 artificial turf fields. Since that time in 2017, we had 1 artificial turf field that's primarily serving the high school, and has helped out with the use and overuse of the fields at the high school. The artificial, the recreation department and recreation fields need artificial turf fields. We recommend the field be put in Upper Trotting Park Road, which is very used. We just put in $750,000 into that, and the field is already showing overuse. So if we put an artificial turf field, that could solve a lot of problems. Back in 2020, we recommended putting an artificial turf field at Sandwich Road, George Gasper Complex, but that was pushed aside by the new fire department, and rightfully so. We'd ask that you put a half a turf field there for practice reasons, not for games, for practice. So when there's rain or wet conditions, recreation and AAU teams can still practice. They can practice on our artificial turf fields, and we can make rules so that it's not causing any congestion on Sandwich Road. And one of the most important things we're here to talk about is pickleball courts. I'd be remiss if I didn't. The Recreation Committee recommends unanimously through a subcommittee who provided us all kinds of information that pickleball courts go at Upper Trotting Park Field, adjacent to the skateboard park, as well as the fields. And also up at Upper Skating Park is the Upper Trotting Park is the old skate park. It's never stopped being used. We built a new one, and more people came, so now they're using both. We'd like to ask the town, possibly a community preservation application, to resurface that court so that it'll be safe and usable. In addition, in Sandwich Road, the SBLO playground that was removed for the senior center next to the recreation department has never been reassembled. It was supposed to be reassembled at Sandwich Road, George Gasper Complex there. It hasn't happened. It may no longer be feasible due to the equipment. And I understand that there's a balance left over from the senior center. Maybe that balance for the funding for the senior center building could be used for that playground. That was part of the conversation and the talk in regards to that. And lastly, there's at the planning board next month, the recreation department's Joe is going to the planning board to ask for a modification of Sunday activities at the Sandwich Road field. The Sunday activity is a condition when they built those fields that you couldn't use the fields before after 12 noon. So the recreation department has asked that that can be removed so that flag football that plays at the Falmouth Heights approximately 10 times a year in the fall, can play there. They have their building there where they store their equipment, and they continually try to be ousted off that field by road races and special events. They would solve the problem of road races and their special events that they've changed the time, they changed the routes. If the program moved to Sandwich Road, we would never have that problem again. And in addition, in the event that the Mayflower wind project happens to go through Falmouth Heights in that field, the Falmouth Youth Flag Football with 172 children would have no place to play. So the removal of that 12 noon not being able to play at Sandwich Road has been in place for 15 years. The committee feels it's time for that to change. It's flag football, it's not tackle football that used to play there. There's no cheerleaders, there's no noise, and it's very well run. I used to be a part of that for 7 years, and I think it's time that that regulation condition from the planning board be changed. And lastly, I forget, we wanted to thank the Department of Public Works for doing the best they can for our fields, and the Recreation Committee asked me to advocate for them also to increase their salaries and so they can have plenty of help also. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
I just have a question on how we move these things forward, because some of them have been lingering. Are we supposed to vote affirmatively on the report, or, we just listen to it, and then how does it get moved forward?
Yeah, so I can certainly follow up on these items. Some of them you'll see in the capital plan, some, as has been mentioned, are already funded, and the example of the floor, we were chasing leaks. There were 3 or 4 different repairs that were attempted in order to address the leaks that were getting to the floor, and I think we may have finally tackled that, so that's now ready to move forward. So now it's just a matter of freeing up some of Joe's time and that of his staff, so we can, and that of the facility staff, so we can move that project forward. So it's a variety of different answers. Some of these are large capital projects that he's talking about in terms of a turf field, so the capital plan is where we would have that conversation.
And the staffing issue is something that I think will be taken up in a different conversation that we previously discussed, how we probably have to talk about some bigger picture items.
I think the point is well taken, however, that we do need to be updated on some of the things that these groups have asked for and that have been approved previously to your administration, but I think it's a really good point that we do need to be updated, because you're right, we hear the reports and then we're not sure what happens from there.
We'll have to remember to check back.
Well done.
Okay.
And I would ask that Mr. Johnson's job take that piece on. I know you've got a plate full right now. And I just want to thank you, Mr. Brown, for really digging into the ADA pieces. I think that's really important, and including the Mass State regs in your presentation was very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're a little bit behind here. We're going to hear from Leslie Fields, the Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan update from the Woods Hole Group, and I have you for 20 minutes.
It's about 3 hours worth of work.
Huh?
You've got the mouse right here. It's just a right.
Really well done, huh?
Oh, yes.
Thanks.
It bothers me is there's been some prior work that's probably not reflected in it.
It's probably too old.
Well, it's not that old. Just
Right.
pre-pandemic.
Thank you for having me. I'm here tonight. My name is Leslie Fields. I'm with the Woods Hole Group, and here tonight to update the Board of Selectmen on the Falmouth Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. We've been working with the town's local emergency planning committee, LEPC committee, to update the plan, and we have a draft of the plan.
Do you close, excuse me for 1 second, can you stop the clock? Can you close the door? There's a lot of talking going out there, and it's really disruptive.
I'm not sure we can. He's talking about the outside door.
No, close that something.
I
Either
can get
close the
closer
door,
here, too.
move them out, or something.
It's a public meeting, you have to keep it open.
No, the outside door. Close the outside door and ask that the group move aside and,
Or come in.
or come in and sit, but they can't be talking out there.
All right.
I apologize.
That's all right, no worries. So we have a draft of the plan up on the town's website, and I have a link to that on the last slide of the presentation. Comments are being accepted on the plan up until August 1st, so we've got about another week for that. And after we get those comments, we'll be updating the plan with the comments and then submitting it to MEMA and FEMA. The process for their review takes about 2 to 3 months. They'll give us their comments, we'll update them, and then we'll be asking the board to sign an adoption form for this plan. So we've got a form that's in the draft application. I didn't put a copy in the PowerPoint presentation, but it's basically an adoption of the plan. Once you guys adopt it, sign that, we send it back to FEMA, and then the plan is final. So the town is responsible, or should, I guess, update this plan once every 5 years. So this is an update of a plan that we did 5 years ago. All right, how do I make this thing go? Okay. This is just a brief overview of what a hazard mitigation plan is. So it helps the community prevent property damage and loss of life associated with natural hazards and other, also expedites disaster recovery. It helps the community save money because you're doing pre-disaster mitigation efforts. And it also, maybe most importantly, helps you guys become eligible for FEMA funding. So there's a number of FEMA programs that will provide grants to the town for pre- and post-disaster mitigation efforts. This slide here shows the key hazard mitigation chapters. Basically what we do is we look at the range of natural hazards that can occur in Falmouth. We look at the critical assets and critical facilities in the town. We assess vulnerability of those assets to the hazards. We develop mitigation actions to help minimize impacts to those assets. And then we also talk about the planned maintenance process. I'm going to spend most of my time on Chapter 5 because I think that's the most important for the board to hear about, you know, what we've come up with in terms of mitigation measures. I've got a couple of slides before I get into that, though. So this first one here just shows all the hazards we looked at. So there are 15 hazards we looked at for this town. The first 14 are ones that are in the state hazard mitigation plan, and we are required to look at those hazards for each community that we work on. So the LEPC committee added that impacts to freshwater quality, that hazard number 15, as an additional hazard they wanted us to investigate. Okay, one of the things that the committee did was they ranked all these hazards, and we ranked them in terms of likelihood of occurrence, severity of damage, and then area over which it occurs. So is that a hazard that's very local, maybe just, you know, in the downtown area, or is it a hazard that can occur townwide? So we used these ranking criteria and ranked the hazards. So you can see the ones at the top of the list were ranked highest. So that's severe winter weather, hurricane and tropical storm, flooding, both inland and coastal, and then other severe weather. The ones at the bottom of the list, landslide and tsunami, are obviously at the bottom because they're not very frequently occurring in the town. This is just a snippet of one of the tables in the report that lists the critical facilities. So we have 112 critical facilities that were identified. So these are things like town facilities, schools, medical nursing facilities, housing authority facilities, water, wastewater facilities, transportation, things like that, both public and private facilities. So we work with the committee to identify these 112 facilities, and then we looked at the vulnerability of those facilities to, on this table, to flooding. And we have different sources of that flooding information. This column right here is FEMA flood information. This next one is our Army Corps of Engineers estimate of what will flood during Category 1, 2, 3, 4 hurricanes. And then the last three columns are flooding in the future based on some probabilistic modeling that Woods Hole Group has done. So I just showed you a little piece of this table just to give you an idea. So like the Veteran Service Center, for example, we know is vulnerable to flooding. It's in a FEMA AE zone. The Army Corps of Engineers also recognizes that it's vulnerable, and we're showing that there's an 18% of it chance of that facility being flooded in any given year by 2070. So you can see some of these facilities are vulnerable, others are not. So all that data is in the plan if you want to go through it and look at it. We also looked at vulnerability of all the parcels in town, so townwide. And we looked at residential properties, single family, multifamily. We looked at commercial properties, public services, the whole range of sort of land use codes in town. And we looked at vulnerability of those properties to flooding based on, you know, the same criteria in the previous slide. So FEMA's data, the Army Corps of Engineers data, and then future sea level rise scenarios. And so we just quantified the numbers of parcels and the values of those parcels. So those tables, there's a lot of them. They're in the report as well. All right, the goals. So we worked with the committee to develop these 8 goals for the town. And under each goal, we've got mitigation actions. We have a total of 33 mitigation actions, at least one for each one of these goals. So the first goal is to provide residents with adequate access to emergency shelters. The second one is improve communications. The third one is maintain adequate access to public utilities. The fourth one, maintain adequate level of service on all roadways. The fifth one is to investigate, design, and implement projects that will reduce or minimize impacts to critical municipal facilities and resources. Develop education outlets and materials. Make improvements to existing practices. And finally, number 8 is encourage future development that minimizes risks to natural hazards. And so I thought I would just go through these, if I can, in my remaining time. This is an example of one of the tables that's in the report, and there are many just like this. So this one, for example, shows for Goal 1, which is, again, provide residents with adequate access to emergency shelters equipped with sufficient provisions during natural disasters. So what we do is we list what the actual action is right here. So for that one, it was reconstruct the high school gym, glass roof, with a solid surface roof, and install storm shutter on the cafeteria windows. So for each one of these mitigation actions, we've got what hazards addressed. For this one, it's severe winter weather, hurricane and tropical storms, and other severe weather. We talk about the purpose, the responsibility. So what group in town is responsible for implementing this mitigation action? In this case, it's the school department, the Emergency Operations Center, and the Department of Public Works. We give it a cost, and there were ranges of costs. I can't off the top of my head remember what the ranges were, but I think this high is over $250,000. We also talk about potential funding sources, whether it's grant funding or a town meeting article. And the LEPC committee ranked them. Is it a high priority item, a low priority, and when, or a timeline when it should be done. So this is an example of, for each mitigation action, we've got a table like this in the plan. And now I'm just going to run through the mitigation actions. So now we're on to Goal 2. Again, that's to improve communications between private citizens, businesses, utility companies, the town, regional, state, and federal agencies. And so we have 2 goals there. One thing I do want to say is that a lot of these actions are things that either the town is already doing or has begun to do. Others are new ones that they haven't begun. So we went ahead and included things that are in the plan that the town is doing as a way to, A, remind you to keep doing it, and B, so that you'll get recognized by FEMA for doing some of the actions you're doing that are, valuable hazard mitigation actions. And you'll get credit for that. So, so the first one here is improve interdepartmental and interagency communications. And the second one is to begin talks with private organizations and businesses in Woods Hole, so like the Steamship Authority, WHOI, MBL, about hazard mitigation, flood prevention, and traffic control. And I know that, both of those actions are things that the town is working on now with that Resilient Woods Hole specifically for item B. The third goal is to maintain adequate access to public utilities such as electricity, drinking water, and communications during and after a natural disaster. So we have 3 recommendations there. When the bridges require maintenance, The idea was to assess the vulnerability of the water mains and other utility infrastructure that's under that bridge or on that bridge, and potentially upgrade it if it makes sense during that bridge repair. Also, this was one that we heard in our previous public meeting, but ensure that all schools and housing authority facilities and town-owned buildings that provide emergency support services are equipped with generators. I know a lot of them have generators, but all of them don't. And so that was a comment that we received during one of the first public hearing. The third one is to establish a regular program of trimming trees on municipal properties that have the potential to impact power supply during storms. Okay, the fourth goal, maintain an adequate level of service on all roadways during and after natural disasters. So we had a number of recommendations here. One is to maintain an adequate supply of salt, sand, and other road treatment materials. Another one is explore stormwater BMPs to address sections of the roadway that flood regularly, like down sort of in front of, at the end of Main Street, in front of the old Friendly's facility. Evaluate alternatives to minimize flooding and sand overwash onto Minot Road. So I know that the project at Bourne's Pond is ongoing, but there's other areas of Minot Road that could also use the same level of protection. Design and reconstruct the Falmouth Heights Bluff Shore Protection. We know that the DPW is working on that, so that's something that's on their radar, and they've made some progress there. Design and reconstruct shore protection along Chapacoite Road Causeway. Here again, some of that work's being done. I think completion is slated in the next couple of years, if not this year. And then proceed with construction of the Bourne's Pond Bridge project and associated Minot Beach Nourishment project. Again, that's ongoing. And then evaluate adaptation alternatives for low-lying roads and bridges throughout town. And I do know that the town has signed on to an MVP project, which will do just that. So I think that one's ongoing as well. Goal 5 was just to investigate, design, and implement projects that will reduce and minimize the risks and impacts from natural hazards to critical municipal facilities and resources. So one of the requirements or mitigation measures was to create a wetlands restoration plan and begin reconstruction of the most vulnerable areas. The town has already made progress there by work at the Coonamessett River Restoration area, but there's other areas of town that warrant that level of planning and effort there as well. Identify the town's most at-risk critical facilities and evaluate potential mitigation alternatives. Reconstruct the Fresh River outlet and the Salt Pond outlet, so to include a new roadway and groin area that will control sediment transport so it won't shoal so often. Another recommendation is to consider the feasibility of beach nourishment at Chapacoite Beach, and then conduct fuel management activities and fire hazard mitigation focus areas that's identified in the Barnstable County Wildfire Preparedness Plan. A few more for Goal 5. Also, maintain a list of municipal construction projects, bylaw code revisions, and properties to acquire to reduce risk from natural hazards. Integrate municipal mitigation and adaptation projects into the town's operating capital budgets. I know you guys do that, but this is just a reminder to keep doing that and to identify those activities so they can be included in the budgets. Update the Falmouth Open Space and Recreation Plan to include properties identified in the recent vulnerability assessment that was conducted that would allow salt marsh migration in response to sea level rise. Evaluate alternatives for reducing vulnerability to this building here. So it's vulnerable to flooding in, I think, 2050, as soon as 2050. Goal 6, develop public education outlets and materials. So we've got 3 recommendations here. One is to continue use of social media and other public outreach channels, such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, to update the public and to help them prepare for hazards. Also, I think this is an important one, is to encourage people to sign up for the Falmouth Alert. So that was something that I learned about as a part of doing this work, and I didn't realize that you actually have to sign up in order to get those alerts. So I feel like we need to get that message out to the public so that they understand that that's something they have to do. Also, develop informational brochures that highlight pre- and post-disaster preparedness, and then develop some outreach materials in concert with Eversource on the importance of allowing tree trimming around power lines, which a lot of times, I guess, public doesn't really always want to have happen because it will, you know, cut down the trees near their property, but I think if they understand the importance of it, I think that's what would help with that issue. Okay, I've got two more, I think, here. Two more. Goal 7 is to make improvements to existing practices based on experience gained during disaster response and recovery. So here, the committee came up with an idea to work with the local land trust to identify repetitive loss properties that the trust would be willing to potentially buy out in the event of substantial damage, with the intent that the properties would be reverted back to a natural condition. Another is to verify the location of the repetitive loss properties. If they can't be located or is in somewhere else, if the data are bad, then notify FEMA to get the property off the town's repetitive loss list. Develop and maintain pre- and post-storm response plans for the Falmouth public beaches, and also to revise the Conservation Commission wetland regulations to be consistent with the coastal resiliency goals and policies. And then the last goal here, encourage future development that minimizes risks to natural hazards such as flooding and high winds. So the committee came up with review and revise local codes and bylaws to increase the resiliency of construction projects, and lobby for changes in the state building code. Also to contact owners of repetitive loss properties to inform them of financial assistance programs for mitigating, elevating, and/or acquisition. And then finally, to develop a framework that addresses buyouts and incentives for relocating in low-lying areas. So that was a lot of reading, but I really wanted to get through all of it so that we had it out there. Again, we are accepting comments on the plan through August 1st. You can go to the Falmouth main website, look under Falmouth News, and there's a link right there to the hazard plan. If you do have comments, you can provide those comments to me by email. That.
Questions? Mr. Patterson?
Leslie, I noticed that there were some recommendations from the Coastal Resiliency Action Committee that I didn't see in this report. Is that because people for whom this is intended don't need it? But it's still important? I mean, I just don't want us to, particularly the vulnerability to this building.
Yeah.
And some of the mitigation items that they were recommending, I didn't see in your report.
We do have adaptations to this building as that is one of the mitigation actions. But if there are some in there, Sam, that should be in here, I can go back through the vulnerability assessment and make sure that we've not missed any.
It was actually in their Coastal Resiliency Action Report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, and this isn't.
Okay, yeah, so right.
It's in that report, and that's just 2021.
Yeah, it's just finished last year, right. Yeah, so under Goal 5, Alternative J was to evaluate alternatives for reducing vulnerability at Town Hall. So that one's in there, but I'm more than happy to go back through that Coastal Resiliency Report and just make sure that we haven't missed any.
Yeah, there were just some recommended major projects that would not only protect Town Hall, but businesses on Main Street. And if you use money as a criteria for prioritizing, we talk about billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So, when I see a figure like that, I'm saying, whoa, maybe we should really be taking this seriously.
Yep. Point well taken, so I'll double check that.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, speaking of dollars, that 33 items, that will add up to a lot of money as well. I was also interested that you said that look at revise the wetlands regulations. I was thinking personally that I think the town should petition the state to eliminate the Army Corps of Engineers from the review process of these shoreline permitting projects, and potentially the local regulatory agencies as well. Maybe we could petition to have just coastal zone management, maybe a single entity, because the changing coast is so dynamic right now. I don't think the regulatory process that we have in place is capable of keeping up with it. And I wonder if that's something that we should be adding as a recommendation.
We could consider that. I don't know if that's.
Not to say that they're going to listen, but
Yeah.
I mean.
Right. mean, so we have.
Let's start somewhere.
Have to get permits from, you know, the local Concom, and then DEP, several permits from DEP and CZM and Army Corps. That's the general.
Right, and the amount of time between phases, by the time you get to it, your project has changed.
Yeah.
We've got, the Minot Bridge project was funded, how many years ago? I don't know, but it was $5 million that was funded. By the time we get through this regulatory process, it's probably gonna cost us 10 or 12.
Yeah.
So that is a big impediment to our ability to fund projects, because we're just shooting at darts in the dark when we don't even know what the cost is gonna be by the time we get to a 7-year process of trying to permit a project.
I think that's a fair point. I don't know how successful we'd be in eliminating any one of those agencies from the regulatory process. I do know that DEP is looking very carefully at their regulations and trying to make them more current and make them more flexible to allow projects that are, you know, resiliency-based projects for climate change. So that might help some of these projects, like the Minot Road Bridge project. I mean, that's a good project.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it should be, you know.
Pretty urgent.
Yeah.
But yet it goes on and on year after year. We just found out that, I don't want to throw stones, but there's one regulatory agency that was unable to expedite the product in time, and now we're faced with another year delay. When we thought we were all set, you know, last year, we were ready to break ground at the end of this summer, and now it's another delay. It's beyond our control.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we're at our 21 minutes, but go
Sorry.
ahead, Mr. Patterson.
Well, no, but you know, to what Doug is saying, I mean, we have conflicting priorities. Sometimes I question, you know, sort of when they apply their priorities, when really, if you think about preservation of natural resources, the destruction or the modification is going to be such a minor percentage of the overall natural resource. And yet we could be saving billions of dollars and who knows how many lives if we actually implemented some of these, you know, hard solutions, if you will, along the coast. So I don't know whether you have any sense of where all these regulatory agencies are going, but, you know, it seems like these are hurdles that we're not going to be able to get over.
They're slower. They're slower and slower with COVID. You know, they're backlogged, and it's a problem in our industry, getting the permits. It's just very, very, very lengthy process.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go to the State House and.
It's like just letting it all go by default.
Any other questions from the board? Comments?
I thought it was very well done.
All right, thank you.
Skimmed most of it. I'll
wow,
really dig
very
into
good.
it again.
Yeah, thank
A
you.
lot of
It's
information.
very effective and really identified a lot of work to be done, so
Yeah.
well done, thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very
Thank you very
much.
much. Yeah. Just pull this out of here.
Report from the Cape Cod Commission. Robert Muscali.
Madam Chairman, members of the Select Board, I'm Bob Muscali, Oxbow Road T-Ticket on Falmouth's representative to the Cape Cod Commission. This is my first report to the Commission, so I'm a little unsure exactly what the board may want to know, but I'm here to give you a brief report. I know you have a very big audience, and I'm sure they're not here for my presentation, so I'm going to make my report brief, but give you some updates of what's going on at the Cape Cod Commission.
And we've scheduled you for 15 minutes. Mr.
Yeah, and I don't think I'll take that long.
Okay.
And I'll offer myself, you know, to speak with any of you at any time if you have any specific questions. So as you know, the Cape Cod Commission is the planning and regulatory agency for Barnstable County, and it reviews, for the most part, projects that are deemed to have a regional impact and then meet certain standards. Honestly, the first 4 or 5 months of my time on the commission were very slow. There really wasn't that much going on. But recently, there have been 2 projects that, while not directly affecting Falmouth, certainly indirectly affect Falmouth, that the commission has approved, one of which was in the Cape Cod Times today, and was the expansion of the Cape Cod Hospital to its 4-story expansion in its oncology unit. So we approved that about 2 weeks ago. The other project was a residential development, Wilkins Avenue, which is in Hyannis behind the Home Depot property, and that was the approval of 272 market rent with some affordable housing apartments. And the third project that I'm involved on the subcommittee is the development of the Scudder Avenue, Twin Brooks property, which has been on the newspapers a lot, and there's been a lot of discussion about the development of that parcel. Those of you who may be familiar with it, it's spinning off the golf course portion of the property to develop 312, again, market rent with 13% affordable apartments, at least 13%. That's the proposal that's going through the subcommittee process. So those are 3 pretty important projects that have been, within the past few months. 2 Falmouth-specific projects that have only really come up on my radar within the past couple of days. The one is the Martha's Vineyard Reliability Project, which is the application of Eversource to run cable from Oak Bluffs to spots here in Falmouth. I received today a copy of the Secretary of Energy, her certificate. I think I forwarded to Ms. Davidson and asked her to forward it along, but the certificate was issued, and it was issued in such a way so that there will be a single application. It won't be the normal process, which is a draft and then a final. But the certificate does call for certain additional information, which their initial application did not contain. An EIR will be required once compliance has been found. If compliance has been found, it will be referred to the Cape Cod Commission to initiate DRI review. Up to this point, there have been informal discussions between the applicant and the commission, but there really is no firm information about that other than what was contained in the Secretary's certificate. The other matter is 27 Crosby, which is the Bingham Pier modification. The applicant had filed an expanded environmental notification form, and it was just noticed in the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act Monitor on July 22nd, and comments to that will be due within 30 days, which would be August 22nd. Given the scope of the project, it is deemed to be a development of regional impact, and a DRI review will be required. And if there is a subcommittee to be formed for that, given I'm Falmouth's representative, there's a good chance that I would become the chairman of that subcommittee. As some of you may know, most of the real work at the commission for projects is done by the subcommittees. The staff is wonderful, they do a great job, but for public testimony and the public hearing process, it's mostly conducted by subcommittees, and then the subcommittee makes a recommendation and submits it to the full Cape Cod Commission for approval, disapproval, or modification. I'm on the subcommittee for that Scudder Avenue development, and we've had, I think, 8 or 9 subcommittee hearings going 2.5, 3 hours long, all by Zoom, over the past 4 or 5 months. So that's where most of the actual testimony is taken and much of the heavy lifting is actually done. I did send on to the board, and I think you all should have received the update that was prepared by the Cape Cod Commission, dated July 2022. I'd ask that it be put into the record. I won't read it verbatim, but I will just highlight some of the matters that are contained in the update. The complete streets prioritization plan that Falmouth had submitted was approved, and the town is now eligible for up to $400,000 to implement the complete streets projects, the various areas that they prioritized. There is been a grant for district local technical assistant funds to support an update of the town's open space and recreation plan. Let's see what else real quickly here. The 2023-2027 Transportation Improvement Program has been approved. The Cape Cod Commission had some outreach at the Bike Committee's day on May the 18th here in Falmouth. 4 students from Falmouth participated in the 2022 Climate Ambassador Program. I had hoped that I would be able to bring a representative from the commission with me this evening, but given the time of year and the planning for the One Cape Summit, that really wasn't able to happen. But next time I'm before the board, I will have someone with me that could maybe go into more depth about the commission and its projects. I will urge. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing. I did meet with the chair of the planning board and the town planner back in May, and we discussed some of the projects that will probably be coming to the commission at some point in time that are Falmouth projects, and those include the solar project at Cape Cod Country Club, which seems to be stalled for the time being. The YMCA project that is proposed for, or in the proposed stages off Brick Hill Road. The adoption of a growth incentive zone, as I'm sure the board knows. 3 towns in Barnstable County have growth incentive zones: Hyannis, Yarmouth, and Buzzards Bay. And there is discussion about that being something that might come before the commission. The Mayflower Wind Project, of course, is there waiting. And then I just wanted to say that I've heard from a number of people and know that that the town has not taken advantage, or at least I'm told anecdotally that the town has not taken advantage of the resources and support that the Cape Cod Commission offers to the various towns. And I urge you to let it be known to the department heads that those resources and support is there and is available to them. And if I can facilitate that in any way, I'd be happy to do that. And I urge you to join me, and I think at least Mr. Patterson, to attend the One Cape Summit August 1st and 2nd. So I think that's about it. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Muscali. Comments from the board? Questions?
I will also be at the One Cape Summit.
Oh, good. Very good. Should be an interesting summit. A lot of discussion about affordable housing and something I know many of us are very concerned about. So looking forward to that.
Just one comment, Madam Chair, if I could, is I'm just very excited about the ponds program that the Cape Cod Commission has undertaken, and I was very happy to see that the Assembly has now voted funding for that program, because I think it's really time we pay attention to our freshwater ponds, and I'm glad that the Commission has taken the initiative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Scully. Appreciate it.
All right.
Where does the summer take place?
Quasit
The Quasit
Resort. in Harwich.
It was first and second.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Johnson-Staub?
I think there's people waiting to come in.
Come in. And I've allotted 30 minutes plus an additional 3 minutes for Mr. Cohn's presentation.
Please give them time to come in.
I haven't said it. They can move in.
We have 4 seats available right in the middle here.
Right over
Who wants to grab them?
Yeah. Yeah, what?
Report.
Noel. Seats for. Okay, we need to begin. Go ahead,
Okay.
Mr. Johnson.
Good evening.
Not all in yet.
Yeah.
Let the people come in.
I have let them come in. I've given them plenty of opportunity and time. There's one more seat, 2 seats actually. Okay, there are 2 seats over here if anybody wants them, but I'd like to get the presentation started. We're going to start the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So tonight we're here to talk about fire station staffing. I'm going to review the Select Board fire station staffing goals. I'm going to describe the current status of fire station staffing and identify potential actions to achieve those goals. So the Select Board's current goal could not be more clear, and that is to staff all 5 existing stations. And I would start by just saying that I know that Chief Smith takes that goal to heart. He would like nothing better than to be able to come here today and say that we can staff the station every single day without exception. And we'll talk further about that. I certainly share that goal that has been set by the Select Board. The Select Board voted on March 28th a staffing policy. I'm actually going to read that policy because it's fairly carefully crafted. The Falmouth Select Board appreciates the critical role the fire department plays in meeting public safety needs in the town of Falmouth. The board acknowledges that there is a changing demographic in regards to our population and continued development across all geographical regions of town. The board recognizes that significant improvements to the fire department facilities as well as staffing are long overdue, and therefore investments have been and will continue to be needed in terms of upgrading existing or building additional stations, as well as hiring personnel to appropriately staff those stations. The Falmouth Select Board anticipates there will be a time when the town will be operating under a 6-station model. This period of time will commence upon the successful completion and opening of the new fire station on Sandwich Road, and will be in effect until such time as a new station is built for the northwest quadrant of town. In order to meet the requirements in terms of personnel to operate a 6-station model, the town will need to invest significant resources into hiring sufficient personnel to staff 6 stations full-time during the pendency of this time period. The Falmouth Select Board is directing town staff to prioritize the hiring of sufficient personnel to operate the 6-station model as noted above, acknowledging that this will require a commitment of substantive funds for these new employees. So what what is the staffing complement that we need to achieve that long-term goal or that next goal of staffing? Well, I should start with the 5-station. The table shows the staffing that's required to achieve the current 5-station goal in that second column, the middle column, and it identifies the staffing required at each station to achieve the 6-station goal. So as you can see, the numbers of firefighters are listed for each station, and I do want to note, as I go through the presentation, I'm going to use the term firefighters as shorthand. As I know the board is well aware, and I'm sure many of the public is aware as well, all of our firefighters are trained as either EMTs or paramedics. So all of our EMTs and paramedics are firefighters. All of our firefighters are either EMTs or paramedics. I'm simply going to use the term firefighters. Also, with respect to shift staffing and the number of staff required to staff each station, these numbers represent the combination of firefighters, lieutenants, and captains. So this is the fire department personnel that are needed to staff these stations. And again, I'm going to use shorthand in many instances, firefighters, to reference this complement of personnel. So these numbers represent what the chief considers the minimum number that are needed to operate each station, and this is the number, we refer to it as start of shift staffing. So at the beginning of each 24-hour shift, these are the numbers that are needed in order to be able to staff that station. And in summary, as you can see, for a 5-station model, we need 16 firefighters at the start of each shift. And for 6 stations, we need 18 firefighters at the start of each shift. Now we move on to the question, okay, if we need 16 at the start of shift, how many does the fire department need? And what starts out as seeming like a simple question, when you put it into practice, turns out to be more complicated. So there are 4 groups of the firefighters are grouped into 4 separate shifts or groups. Each works 24-hour shifts. They work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 5 days off. If it were as simple as 14 times 16 firefighters, 64 complement of 64 for the department for 5 stations, it would be pretty straightforward, but that does not account for medical leave, military leave, vacation, sick leave, and vacancies. So this is a snapshot of where we are this month. We have budgeted 78 firefighters, lieutenants, and captains for shift strength. As of this month, 4 of those 78 budgeted positions are brand new. There were 3 added to the budget. So there was a budget increase to add 3 firefighter positions. But we also had a fire alarm operator position that was dedicated to a system that has been phased out. So that salaried position has been converted to a firefighter. So that's where we get the number 4 new firefighter positions just added effective July 1st. So those are obviously not filled and available for staffing. In addition, we have 2 vacancies that are due to retirements or resignations. I would note these are not the quote-unquote override positions. The override positions were all filled, but as a large department, there is turnover each year. So we currently have 2 vacancies due to turnover. We have 2 firefighters that were hired recently but are not fully trained and therefore not available to count as shift staffing. We have 4 firefighters presently out on a long-term medical leave, and that could be line of duty or it could be personal. And we have 1 member that's out on military leave. So we start with 78 budgeted positions, but we're down to 65 that are actually available to work a shift on a regular basis. So after accounting for these vacancies and long-term leaves, we have 4 shifts of, we have 3 groups of 16 firefighters and 1 group of 17 firefighters. And as we said, for our immediate goal of staffing 5 stations, we need 16. And then we start to account for absences based on vacation leave, sick leave, short-term medical conditions. By contract, there can be up to 4 firefighters out on vacation on any one given day. And obviously, we can't control when folks get sick. So given our current staffing levels and the current number of vacancies and long-term leaves that we have, there are frequently fewer than 16 firefighters reporting at the start of shift. To reach our current goal of staffing 5 stations with 16 firefighters, 1 or more firefighters must be hired on an overtime basis on most days. And this is some specific data looking at April, May, and July that shows how we're doing in getting to our goal of staffing 5 stations every day. And what we're showing here on the top line, the top row, if you will, is the number of shifts or days. We divide up each day into a day shift or a night shift, 12-hour shifts. So the number of days that were not staffed at 16, meaning West Falmouth Station could not be operated. There were 12 day shifts and 7 night shifts in April. There were 7 day shifts and 2 night shifts in May, and there were 6 day shifts and 1 night shift in July. So I skipped over June, and the reason for that is because there were 8 days in June where the station had to be closed in order to repair the driveway. Obviously, that's a really critical repair that had to be done in order to preserve the long-term viability of that West Falmouth station. And that was the time needed to complete the work and for the pavement to settle so that it wouldn't get damaged by the apparatus. So, I took that month out just because it threw off the percentage numbers. And the July numbers shown here are obviously, were not complete. Those are through July 22nd. So the top line shows the number of days we did not meet our target of keeping all 5 stations staffed with 16. The second row shows the number of days that we did staff all 5 stations by hitting the 16 firefighters. And I should note, again, that includes offering overtime, right? So when we don't have on a regular basis the 16 firefighters of the firefighters that are assigned for that day, if we don't have 16, the chief opens up for overtime. And our success rate, day shifts, was at 60% in May, went up to 77%, 60% in April, went up to 77% in May, and went down slightly to 73% in July. The night shifts are consistently a little better. We were at 77% success rate for night shifts in April, 85% in May, and actually up to 95% so far in July. One other thing I'll just say about our current status is we have a minimum staffing of 14 right now, so if we're below 14, the chief is able to hold someone over on an overtime basis to make sure we get to at least 14 and staff 4 stations. So what actions are we taking, can we take to reach our current goal of staffing 5 stations? Obviously, filling the 6 vacancies, and the chief can speak in greater detail if the select board would like a report on where we stand with those 6 vacancies. We are actively completing the training process for 2 recent hires, and we continue to offer voluntary overtime to get to that 16 start of shift. The last item that is, really we're left with in the short term this fiscal year to try to get to that 16 at the start of shift is to consider a change in the minimum shift staffing from 14 to 16. And I have discussed with the chair before this meeting that she will be planning an executive session for the board to talk about minimum shift staffing. And the reason that needs to be done in executive session is because it is a contractual item. We would need to negotiate with the union to get to that point, and that's a negotiation about, when do we do it, when do we do it, and the union may ask for something in return in order to agree to increase that minimum shift staffing. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that might be. So what is minimum staffing. Obviously, to some extent it's self-explanatory, but it's, I think, important to understand how it works in practice. So the specific provision in the contract allows the chief to hold over a firefighter who worked the previous shift to work an additional shift. As you know, we're talking about firefighters working a 24-hour shift. So you're saying to that firefighter, after having worked 24 hours, we need you to work another shift. And even if it's just really, it would be just the day shift. So we can't, as a matter of, again, it's a union contractual provision and a common sense safety matter that we wouldn't want a firefighter to work 48 hours straight or 72 hours straight, potentially, when you think about their schedule, 24 hours on, 24 hours off, 24 hours on. If that middle shift is being filled, we can't have a firefighter working 3 days in a row. So there is no contractual provision right now that would allow for the fire chief to order someone not assigned to work the previous day to come in and work the next day. And there are some practical limitations to one's ability to do that in terms of how do you make sure you can get in touch with those officers. But in any event, that's not in the union contract at this time. So as a historical reminder, it was not long ago, it was just July of 2020, that the minimum staffing was 10, and it was increased from 10 to 14. That was done at the same time that we established a minimum 2-person on any apparatus that responds to an incident, whether it's an engine or an ambulance. So I do want to talk a little bit further about some of the considerations that we need to think about and that the board can discuss further in executive session about when is the right time to consider increasing minimum shift staffing. And one is just the public safety impact of having firefighters work 36 hours straight. And as I said, even with minimum staffing, we can't order that night shift to be filled. They're working 24 hours. The chief can order them to work the 12-hour day shift, but can't order them to work, that 12-hour night shift, whether or not it's leading into another 24-hour shift. So there's a limitation, just to sort of understand. There is a limitation even with minimum shift staffing in terms of our ability to keep that complement of firefighters that you're getting to through an ordered holdover overtime situation. So the table here shows what's our success rate, and this, we saw this previously, but just to think about these numbers, what we're saying is if we had a minimum shift staff of 16 in April, on 60% of the time we got to 16 without having to force overtime, meaning 40% of the time we would have to have forced overtime for that 12-hour shift and still wouldn't have hit the 16 for the night shift. Again, those numbers are getting better. So if we look at, the July snapshot, we're saying that 27% of the time we would have to be holding over a firefighter or one or more firefighters to get to that 16 minimum start of shift. So there's a consideration of how frequently do we want to be doing that in terms of the hours that the firefighters are working. The other really important consideration is how is that going to affect our recruitment and retention long term? And one of the factors that for the board to be aware of is, as you might expect, the way that holdover works under the union contract is by seniority. So it will be the less senior officers that are held over to work those mandatory overtime holdover shifts. And in this, as we know, for all positions, and not just for the town of Falmouth, but for all employers, hiring and retention is becoming more and more challenging. It's certainly true for firefighters, but it's not only true for firefighters. And with housing costs, many of them are not living in Falmouth, so the longer they're driving to get here, the more likely it is at some point there's going to be a fire department that's hiring between where they live and here. And if you add to that we're forcing them to work overtime shifts, that may be a disincentive for them to continue to work with the town of Falmouth. I'm not saying that we should never increase minimum shift staffing. I just want to illustrate that if there were easy answers to get to what everyone here wants, which is that we have 6 stations staffed every day, we'd be doing it. We want to do it. But there are some challenges that we just do not have easy answers for. And finally, I think it goes without saying, I mentioned that it is a collective bargaining issue. I put the union president on notice that we would be talking about this, and that I would be communicating with the select board in executive session about potentially opening a conversation about when the right time to increase minimum shift staffing might be. So I'm going to shift now from our current 5-station goal to our future 6-station goal. And what we've seen, this is probably a good time to make the point and state the obvious, which is that when we put the override together 2 years ago, and we put 8 positions on the override, we put 2 more within the budget without an override. We had hoped that by this point, when all of the override positions were filled and fully trained, that we would be closer to our goal of 16 every day. And in hindsight, what we've learned is that with the department being larger, that the prior sort of rule of thumb about the difference between the number of positions budgeted and the number that you would routinely get showing up for work each day, there's a bigger gap there than we had anticipated. And I went through, obviously all of those factors to illustrate for you and the public what all of those individual items are. And we did our best to forecast how that was going to play out. In hindsight, we know that it was a little bit optimistic. So we want to be very careful as we forecast ahead and we look at staffing 6 stations and getting to a point where we're consistently getting 18 at the start of shift. I don't want to give you a simple answer and then a couple of years from now be up here again apologizing that we didn't reach the goal that we had hoped to reach. So we have some more analysis to do on that. The forecasting, as I said, is not straightforward. And I think I've covered that. So clearly we're going to need more fire department personnel when the new station in Hatchville is opened. And we don't have a fixed date for that, and with the supply chain issues of construction that we have right now, construction is even more unpredictable than usual. But at this point, our expectation is sometime in calendar year 2024, we might expect for that Hatchville station to be completed. So if we are going to be hiring additional firefighters for them to be available in calendar year 2024, they'll need to be hired at the next town meeting, the next April annual town meeting, and if there's an override, the May 2023 election. And I will say, even with that, what the chief has found recently with the current status of civil service and the current status of hiring generally, it's a 12 to 16 month process to go through hiring and training. So even with putting new positions on the budget, in the budget for next spring, we're probably looking at 16 months from May. So it's going to be late in 2024 would be the earliest. And I would also say that while it might be, I would have a lot more confidence. I would have a lot more confidence in saying if we were hiring 4 firefighters, to say that within 16 months we should be able to hire 4. But as those numbers creep up over 10, even with 16 months, I don't know that we can guarantee that we're going to fill all of those. So that's just part of our reality and part of our planning that we need to, be honest about and understanding as we move forward. So how many positions we need to add is partly this forecasting analysis, but it also relates to some policy decisions. And one of those is going to be, is the select board willing to entertain a multi-year plan to get to staffing 6 stations on an everyday basis? So again, we may be in the mode of using overtime to get to 18 at the start of shift, hiring more positions and using overtime to get to 18 as we continue over a multi-year process to hire more positions. And then either through continued hiring or a combination of hiring and minimum staff changes, bargaining changes in minimum staffing, getting to okay, now we're at a point where every day we're able to staff 6 stations. So those are policy considerations for the board that we need to talk about in terms of deciding on an override number and how many new positions to add next year and how many we might want to add in the year or 2 after that as well. So, I think I've said it, but I'll say it again just to be blunt. It may not be possible to hire the number of firefighters required to guarantee 6 stations will be staffed every day beginning in 2024. I want to touch briefly on the SAFER grant. The SAFER grant is an option. It's a tool that we can use, but it is very much a limited tool. The number of firefighters that we can add through a SAFER grant really should be determined based on the number of positions that can be added to the future budget without an override when the grant subsidy ends. So the most recent round of the grant was 3 years fully paid for by the federal government. Before that, it was less generous. It was 3 years, first year's at 100%, and the second year was at a lower percent, 75, third year, 50%. But whatever that number is, the reason that we didn't the last round put 8 firefighters on a SAFER grant is because we have a chicken and egg problem. We can't use the SAFER grant if we've already got money in the budget. And we can't vote an override and say, well, we don't need it yet, but we're going to need it 3 years from now when the SAFER grant runs out. So the SAFER grant can be a good tool to add a few positions, a few firefighters, and that would be a discussion with the finance director of how many can we put in the budget in a future year without an override. So, I think you're talking about the range of 2 to 4, not 10 to 20. Finally, the timing of the SAFER grant is such that they don't have a grant open right now, and we, the fire chief, finance director, and I had a conversation with the representative of the SAFER grant program, and that timeline will not allow for any new positions to be added by calendar 2024, in order to be hired and trained by 2024, just the way the timing works out right now. So before wrapping up, I just wanted to say a few words about perspective. This town and this board has invested quite a bit in the fire department in the last 10 years. We've added 21 positions, and when we look at what that costs in FY21 dollars, not even FY23, using the override estimates for fully loading the benefits of a firefighter position, those 21 firefighters added represents an annual cost of $2.5 million. So it's a pretty big investment that the town has made, and we are getting the benefit of that investment. We have better responses, we have more effective responses, we have safer firefighters, and our response times have been held in check. I hesitate to say improved. They've been held in check despite a significant increase in the number of calls that we've seen in that same 10-year time frame. The calls have gone up from 6,200 to 8,800. So it's a pretty substantial increase. Had we not made that investment in additional firefighters, the response times would have gone up dramatically. So next steps are for the select board to consider acceptable costs for an override and an acceptable staffing plan, and to have an executive session to discuss negotiating with the union regarding minimum staffing. That concludes my presentation. The chief is here to answer questions.
Questions from the board. We're going to start there on the presentation.
I don't have questions, comments, but
Go ahead.
my initial comment would be that I think that we should fold whatever we can into the budget, apply for the SAFER grants, and just get started as soon as possible, even though it's somewhat of a delay. And I don't see the rush to build the Hatfield station, and I don't think we should build it before we have the staffing at least lined up. That's my feeling initially.
Yes. So, if you could go back, I believe you said there's 2 firefighters who are currently being trained but not able to count yet.
Yes.
Do we have any that are not listed here that maybe are waiting to go into the academy, or would they be on that list somewhere?
Yeah, I think, hi, Chief. So, you heard the question. I think the answer is we don't have any. The 2 are the only ones that have been hired at in any point of the fire academy or training process. Is that correct? No, if you're going to talk together.
How about currently, as acting town manager referred to, we have 2 firefighters that are currently in the academy, and they're almost done with their training. They'll be graduating August 5th. They come back. We've already done 1 week of training with them. We'll bring them back for another week of orientation, and we're going to have to continue to work on their job qualifications, which takes a few months to complete. Additionally, right now, we're hiring the positions that were approved, the 3 plus the additional that was provided to us with the salary that was made available. Those individuals, along with 2 additional personnel that are covering vacancies that occurred as a result of retirement and a resignation. So for a total of 6, we've done the interviews. We are vetting them right now, and also going through the medical and psychological exams. And thereafter, they'll be going for physical agility exams, which they have to complete before we can apply for a seat at the Mass Fire Academy. That should take place sometime in August, but unfortunately, the academy right now is backlogged with available positions to allow for our recruits to, or our potential recruits to have a forecasted date. So I've heard some chiefs that have currently been trying to get some recruits in, and they're talking January to February at this point. It's a highly sought after program, and there's been a lot of staffing needs across the Commonwealth, and that's what's creating that backlog. But we are working on filling all our vacancies, and it's in the process.
Thank you, Chief.
So just to be clear, there's those 4 positions that Chief was just talking about. Hopefully we'll get into the academy in the next 4 or 5 months, assuming they pass all the qualifications. That would be those 4. And then there's the 2 that are not fully trained but should be trained in the coming months. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
How robust is our recruiting procedures, and who's responsible for that?
So right now, we're still in the civil service system. So it requires that it go through the state exam process. And we will be looking to bring to town meeting exit from civil service. That has been negotiated with the union. That would give us much better control over recruitment, but right now our recruitment is very limited. We can have a firefighter walk in, or we can have an individual walk into the fire station tomorrow and say, hey, I'd love to be a firefighter, where do I start? And we say, well, you missed the exam, there isn't going to be another exam for 6 months. So.
And there's no inquiries of seasoned firefighters in other places that, all I've ever heard you guys talk about is rookie firefighters. There's no way to reach out to seasoned to make it attractive to come to Falmouth to work?
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. And it's tough for a variety of reasons. It's tough because of housing costs. And we do have some fire districts in Barnstable that are not subject to Prop 2.5, and their pay rates are very high. So, we can't compete with them. So, our pay rates are competitive on the Cape. They're around the median, but we're not at the top of the pay scale. So our ability to recruit away from other Cape communities is pretty limited.
So who's responsible for recruitment, the chief or you, or a combined effort?
Yeah, I mean, it's not something we're actively engaged in, honestly, because it's not realistic that we're going to accomplish that.
So you've never...
In terms of recruiting from other fire departments. Yeah, Chief, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Because we're a civil service department, we depend on civil service to provide us a list when we call for it, when we have a vacancy, and it's all based on scores. But when it's when we obtain these names, they're notified. They come in and sign a list to say that they're available to go through the process. And in some instances, we've had some residents from the town of Falmouth that have made that list. So the state holds exams now every year to refresh this list, which was a major problem early on around the COVID, months and such. And as a result, the list, they weren't holding exams. Now they're starting to get back into that, so the list is being refreshed. But the thing is that because there's a lot of other staffing issues across the Commonwealth, coming to Falmouth isn't as desirable because of the cost of living. There's a residency requirement as well. As a result, we have been fortunate that there have been some residents that have taken the EMT program and have come forward and have taken the civil service exams and now have come in to sign the list because we have a resident's preference. The other thing is that we also look to recruit or to obtain paramedics, and that is not as robust as it used to be. There aren't a lot of certified paramedics that are taking the exams. What used to be a very highly sought-after job, being a firefighter or a police officer, being in public safety, is now starting to really, come down in numbers. So, for example, when I came on in 1987, taking the exams, there was just, thousands and thousands of people trying to get these entry-level jobs. And now it's quite different, and there's not as many. But we work in earnest to get the lists and go through the process. There's times, there's an opening and there's a closure of the list. And once the list is closed, we start to formulate our interviews. So we're on top of it. So I can tell you that since August of 2020, we've hired up to 24 personnel. That's either new positions or to cover vacancies. So prior to these 6 vacancies, we have hired 18 personnel. So we are working very diligently to try and get these vacancies filled as quick as possible. And we've been achieving that. It's just sometimes we run into, administrative issues as we've found, but we try to overcome them and keep moving forward.
And you understand everyone's concern, and I hear it. I get phone calls every day. We're going to fund this new fire station. We can't fill the one in West Falmouth. I mean, that's what everybody's thinking in this room.
Correct.
I don't need any help with it, but
No,
thanks.
no.
But that is what is pushing this issue. We can't field that small little fire station, and that's everyone's frustration. That's what I'm hearing from everybody.
Sure. I'm not putting that aside. We've been working towards the improving our infrastructure because of our aging stations, and that's what we've done. There was a study done. The study begat a station location committee that was made up of citizens that came about and helped locate the current station that we have planned, and then a building committee to go about planning for this particular station. And in the interim, we're working with the budgeted positions that we have. And yes, it's been a challenge. I can also tell you that right now, based on our daily staffing and trying to achieve the, the 14 at the start of the day and then a 15 or 16-man shift, which we do with, more often with overtime. During this year, from January up to this point, because we talked about mandatory overtime or holdovers that have occurred to try and maintain the 14-man minimum, we've had at least 30 calendar days where we've had to hold over personnel at some point on that particular day by either one or more personnel to maintain the 14-man minimum. The same time frame last year, there were 122 calendar days. So our staffing level has been improving. It's not there yet. I'd be the first to admit it, and I'd be the first person to tell you that I wish this was taken care of yesterday. But we're working on it, and we are working diligently with the acting town manager, with the board, and I understand the frustration in the issues that are being discussed. But we are working at the problem, and I'm doing everything I can to work with what I have and with the resources we have.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Cohn. And I'm told that your presentation or your clip is 3 minutes. Is that correct?
It's 4.5 minutes, and I was going to ask you a
Well,
procedural.
absolutely not. You want another minute and a half?
No, I'll pass it off to one of my.
You can have the minute and a half.
You can, yeah, you can read it.
Is this
I
what you
don't,
want?
no, P.S., don't go far. I'm of that generation.
What, is this?
When
you?
I tell you, can I just tell you when
Is that?
no, the other one, but I don't want to run it yet. See, I'm going to waste my 4.5 minutes, so.
All right, hold
Time
on.
is ticking.
I'm sorry, I need you to move that so I can get out of here.
Just leave it there and I'll call you when.
Okay,
Gotta
so
get
we'll
it.
just double click that when the
Okay.
time comes.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Yesterday was almost a perfect day in West Falmouth. Hundreds of people enjoying Chappie Beach, many more along the shore towards Black Beach. 50 or so young people from all around the country enjoying their time this summer at College Light Opera. West Falmouth Market was crowded with patrons, long lines to get ice cream underneath the tent. The bike path was full of bikers and walkers. All good. A great day over there, except no firefighters in the West Falmouth station. After 2.5 years, and that's how long I've been coming to this microphone, the passage of almost $1 million override, hiring 8 new firefighters, and still days when the station is shuttered. It really begs the question from me and from our neighbors and friends here, why? Why? The residents of West Falmouth deserve to know that when they call 911, that help is on the way quickly, not 8 to 10 minutes away when an ambulance or a fire truck arrives from a station miles away. I'm not going to lecture the board tonight. I've done that for the past 2.5 years. I tried to educate you on response time, rapid spread of fire through dwellings, and survivability percentages after serious cardiac events. Maybe I've failed because we stand here tonight not that much better than when I outlined all of this at the January forum that the board held back in 2020. Again, we ask why. We were here on October 25th, 2021. Ironically, it's 9 months to the day tonight. We left this meeting feeling really good. A lot of the people that are here tonight were at that meeting. I want you to listen to a very brief cut from that meeting. As background, Chair Brown opened
that anticipated voluntary staffing of the West Falmouth Station, which has been in most evening. That anticipated voluntary staffing of the West Falmouth Station, which has been in motion. However, the need for voluntary staffing as portrayed in this table when the override positions are filled.
I'm going to turn it up.
you start it over?
Yeah.
Just because I didn't hear
Evening.
that.
That anticipated voluntary staffing of the West Falmouth Station, which has been in motion. However, the need for voluntary staffing as portrayed in this table, when the override positions are filled and the remaining vacancies are filled, again, anticipated April, May of 2022, that voluntary overtime will no longer be needed, as there will be in most general times sufficient staffing to allow the chief and command staff to have 2 firefighters in the West Falmouth Station going forward. And again, Chief Smith and Deputy Chief Thrasher are both in attendance tonight to, again, to present this table to the board and to answer questions that you may have.
The following Friday, the Enterprise carried a story about that meeting and about the outcome of it. I lost my man. The second one. We only have 2.
This Word document here?
Sure. There we go.
That's it.
And this was the article that appeared in the Enterprise that following Friday. And I just would ask you if I can scroll back down. The headline of the article basically says, yeah, the other way. West Falmouth Station anticipated to be fully staffed by spring. It's only the first paragraph that I draw your attention to. The Falmouth Fire Rescue Department is on track to resume full-time staffing of the West Falmouth Fire Station by next April or May, Falmouth Fire Chief Timothy Smith said. We project by then to have staffing levels to assign firefighters to all stations. And I won't go on, but it's the point that I make is what happened in the last 9 months? I mean, when both the town manager at the time and the fire chief spoke to the fact that they believed that they could man that station 24/7, it hasn't happened, and now we're well beyond the time that we expected that to happen. This week, there was a very well-researched guest editorial by Eric Turkington in the Enterprise concerning future decisions that the town will face with the build-out of fire department infrastructure. That issue will be discussed at another time, at another night. However, one paragraph in that editorial is germane to tonight's discussion, and I quote, "The town should not reduce an essential public service that the people in many parts of North and West Falmouth have relied upon for over or nearly a century." And that is the point that we have lost. That's exactly what happened when the West Falmouth Station closed. We lost what we had. The lifeline of fire and EMS resources was no longer there. It operates only on a part-time basis. So, Madam Chair, I ask, what is the difference tonight than 9 months ago when a positive outcome was before us? The protection of lives and property is clearly the #1 responsibility that you assume upon election to the Select Board. The message that we need to hear tonight is how we get our needed resources back, and that West Falmouth residents have the same safety net as every other village in the four corners of Falmouth. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? I will take a few. We're way over time. Mr. Finneran, let's start with you.
We're still here. And I'd like to point out something that I found quite disingenuous in Mr. Johnson Swab's presentation. about the safer grants, having it necessary to have the money in the budget. Well, we would have had the money in the budget had not Mr. Suso used his math-a-magic and decided that we had to dump all of our excess capital building a 6-bedroom station that now we see tonight is only going to be staffed by the 2 men, which is all that is necessary. I hate to tell you, but it's my opinion that by the time we're done, this size of this totally unnecessary station is going to cost us about $14 million. Some of that money could have been more easily, readily, and wisely spent hiring firefighters, building a smaller station, and rehabbing West Falmouth. I think that reason alone was enough to dismiss our previous town manager. That's all. I hope this is fixed soon.
Thank you, Mr.
It's been too
Finneran.
long.
Todd?
I wasn't going to talk tonight. Todd Taylor from West Falmouth, retired firefighter for 35 years. We did talk about the staffing earlier when we went from 10 to 14, which was a great safety for our firefighters. 100% supportive of that. We're now at a situation where we have sometimes 18, sometimes 16, sometimes 19 men on a shift. And we've been waiting patiently here in West Falmouth for that station to be opened. And when we went from 10 to 14, we didn't have enough firefighters to do that. The firefighters ponied up and were held over, as we talked about earlier, many, many shifts in order to make that 14. Well, here we are now, asking to go to 16, and has anyone asked the firefighters if they would pony up and maybe support us for the 2 extra guys instead of the 4 they needed when they went from 10 to 14? It would be nice to know whether or not they're on board with this and if they're supportive of going from the number of 14 to 16. I don't know if this is the proper place to ask it, but it would certainly be helpful for us to know, because if the union's not in favor of it, then we're stuck.
We're not going to negotiate
Okay.
in an open meeting. I think Mr. Johnson-Straub mentioned that we're calling for an executive session on August 8th.
Okay, so I think we've waited long enough, and maybe the town can compromise or the union can compromise that we're halfway through the summer. The holdovers have been there, but not as bad as they were 2 years ago, as the chief stated. Maybe we can have the second half of the summer with the staffing to go to 16. There'll be some increased holdovers, yes, but we're halfway through the summer now, and maybe we can come to that agreement. Hopefully on your meeting on August 8th, we can get there, but I would certainly hope that we could compromise, since we've been compromising for 2.5 years now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Sullivan?
Hi, Mark Sullivan. I'm a retired fire chief from the town of Falmouth, for a few chiefs before Tim. And I just want to applaud the town government and the citizens of Falmouth for all the work they've been doing for the fire service and for the fire department in Falmouth. It had been neglected for years and years. And there's nothing against Chief Dunn or the police department, but it was always, we'll give the police whatever they want, whatever they need. The fire department always took a back thing, but the firefighters in the town, as Todd just said, they pointed up, they got the job done. So there was no reason to fix it because it wasn't broken. Now we've realized we've got manpower problems, which we've been saying for years. We've spoken to previous leadership saying we needed, when we have a storm coverage, we would staff the fire stations. We had 21 firefighters on duty. And we told the town for years, that's what you need to supply this town for a proper fire protection service without any overtime, any callbacks, and all that stuff. But again, I just want to applaud the town government, the leadership, because I think you guys have done a great job in the last 5-6 years. Staffing, equipment, the new station, whether people are for it, against it, that's neither here nor here. The same gentleman, the marshal, mentioned about, put an article in the paper. He said that that same article, they've been waiting for a Hatchell Station from the study in the 1950s. So I lived in Hatchville. It's about a 10, 11-minute response time. It's overdue. We should be able to staff them all. But again, the manpower, and the only thing I'd ask these folks, all these folks in the town that have showed up tonight, if they work together, the town government, the fire chief, they're not your enemies. They're working for you. So maybe somehow we can work together and make things work. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Any comments from the board before we wrap this up? Go ahead.
No, it's not a comment, it's a question, but Chief Smith, if there was a time when we would have just one fireman manning a station, now we have to do two, which is the right thing to do. How much is that causing this personnel shortage that we're seeing at some of the stations?
Going from 1 to 2. So,
as a minimum.
As a minimum, you know, having obviously one person in the station that would free up the other one that we currently have. So, previously we had one person stations, the Woods Hole station, the West Falmouth station, and the North Falmouth station. The North Falmouth station was a one-person station up until 1998 when we got civilian dispatchers. And so again, these things have been, you know, worked out with previous administrations, Chief Sullivan during his tenure, and we've actually relocated personnel, and we currently, you know, we used to have to float somebody down to Woods Hole so we could staff the ambulance because we need 2 personnel. So right now, the 2-man minimum at each station is just that. It's a contractual agreement, but you know, it's you know, safety is there right now, so.
Okay, I'll take 2 more, and that's going to be it. I'll go with you first, sir, and I'm sorry I don't know your name.
Larry Fish.
Hey, Mr. Fish. And then Maury.
With great respect, I just think that you have the responsibility on our behalf to expect better of Chief Smith and interim manager Johnson. We heard excuses. They're probably true. Now, I shouldn't use the word excuses. We heard explanations. But we didn't hear an answer to the simple question of what they're going to do in the short term to fix this problem. And you, as our leadership, as our town management, should expect them to deliver that explanation, that plan to you soon. Because I listened to Chief Smith and I'm despondent about the prospects. And many of us in West Falmouth ask very little of this town. We're temporary residents. We're here 3 months of the year. We don't use the schools. We use a quarter of the year, we use the roads. We ask one thing, police and fire. And we're at risk. And we're looking to you to expect from the town manager and the police chief an immediate plan to fix it.
Or the fire chief.
Pardon me?
The fire chief.
I'm sorry, did I say police?
Yes, sir.
Fire chief. And Mr. Brown?
Yes, sir.
Your question was absolutely right. How on good's earth would you open a new fire station when you can't staff the ones you already have?
Morning, Harlow Hawks, West Falmouth. I just had one question, and maybe, I don't know if it could be answered now, but when I read that about the 6 stations, that again, they might not all be staffed all the time, could this group of people be somehow comforted that when you don't have your mandatory shift, that you close Hatchville or Woods Hole, and West Falmouth gets a little reprieve of always being the one to be shut down? It should be another one instead of us.
I think the board has heard the concerns, and we will meet next week in executive session. Thank you.
I don't think that's sufficient. I have only 5 stations. That Hatchville area is underserved.
Oh, I agree with you.
For such a long time.
Well, I'm not saying that,
What you're all doing is saying, oh, well, we'll make sure you don't lose any service. With this other part of town is going to be orphan still.
yeah.
I just think that's the wrong.
Hey, folks, I'm going to ask you to move out quickly so that we can get on with other business. Thank you, Mr. Fish. If you could help me with that, please.
I just wish you had brought that up as a solution, because I don't think it is.
Well, I'm just saying it'd be silly to go full steam ahead when we just were told we don't have the staffing.
I think we're better to go full steam ahead. The personnel problem is going to be there regardless.
Folks.
They can't get out, you know, there's
It's a fire code anyway.
Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to go on to administrative orders.
How's the annual town meeting?
Let me back up. Let's go to the annual town meeting.
Try your gavel.
Folks, we're going to continue.
Folks, I need you to move out, please. Move them out, please. Thank you.
Madam Chair, you have in your packets a proposed schedule for the November annual town meeting. The board previously voted to hold the meeting on Monday, November 14th. We have the Select Board announcing the schedule tonight. The warrant to be closed Friday, September 2nd. Select Board vote articles and execute warrant September 12th. Publish the articles only September 16th. Petition article presentations September 26th. Select Board vote article recommendations October 3rd. And publish the warrant and recommendations Friday, October 28th. As I mentioned in my report, the charter does require announcing the close of the warrant, but you know, it's proven helpful for the board and the community to be aware of all of these dates so we can stay on track.
Thank you.
I move that we post the proposed November 22 annual town meeting dates.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get on to administrative orders. Authorize approval of grant agreement with Barnstable County for receipt of the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, grant funds for wastewater treatment facility improvements.
Oh, I'm sorry, just for clarification, are we doing these as a consent, or are we doing one by one?
We're going one by one.
Okay.
I move.
I move approval.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, retroactively approve application for the 2022 Edwin Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Funds in the amount of $10,516 for a Bosch Crash Computer Reader, CDR, for the use by Police Department in crash reconstruction investigations. My only question on this is, why is this retroactive? When did this come in?
It's retroactive because it's a regional grant and it's under the state timelines and getting all the towns on board. There just was no time to get it before the board timely.
Thank you.
I move approval.
Yeah, can I ask a question real quick?
Yes.
Who's going to administer this JAG program?
It's going to be administered, let's see. You know, it's administered, I think, through the Cape Association of Police Departments. So it's a collaboration.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we
I
move-
think we had a move of approval.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, if I could just expand on my
Please.
previous answer. It's really just a purchase of equipment. So it's, some of the other awarded recipients, Town of Barnstable and Yarmouth are doing, things involving operations, but the Falmouth component is just to buy equipment.
So who's responsible for the procurement?
The police department, Falmouth Police Department.
Falmouth Police Department. Gotcha.
Okay, approve warrant for Tuesday, September 6th, 2022 in the state primary.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Vote to accept donation from the T-Ticket Civic Association in the amount of $600 to the Veterans Department donation account.
I move approval with gratitude.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, review and vote to approve minutes of the meetings. I had a couple of small things, but Mr. Patterson, do you want to start? Do you have any?
Actually, on the minutes of June the 6th, I found very little wrong with them, very tiny little typos type of thing. I didn't think it was a significant, so, I'm prepared to move approval and release for the public access, but if you have changes, let's get those in.
I just have one. On page 4, it just, at the very, very top, it says Ms. Scott Prices, which is nothing. But just delete that S, and I'm sure it was just a drag because Ms. Scott Price said. I've done that myself, so just get rid of that S, and I'm good, and these are much better.
These are very well done.
Very well.
They were big change.
So do I have a motion to approve June 6, 2022?
That was my motion.
I'll second.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
June 13th?
Similarly, on June 13th, I found them to be pretty straightforward, and so therefore I would like to move approval and release for public access the minutes of June 13th, 2022.
Okay, I have a motion to approve and release.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
And then the July 11th minutes, I have several edits. Certainly invite anybody else to join in. On
Do you
page,
want to send them down, Mr. Patterson? Are they that many? Or you want to
yeah,
just go
they
through them?
are,
Okay.
because there's really some required wording changes, and that changes the structure of the sentences. Some of them are typos, like there's two, on page 7, it says 200. Well, it's supposed to be 200 million, but it should be dollars. And so there are a number of phraseology changes that I think we should. Number 4 on page 6 says discussion on possible leasing of 10 Trotting Park Road. I think that's
Pumping station,
Road. So there are some significant changes and mistakes. I'm happy to share these and
Let's take
let
these
them
and
come
let's
back.
hold them.
I think that, let's wait for another opportunity to
Okay,
approve
so
those.
we have a motion to hold July 11th to have them relooked at and revised.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor of
Aye.
holding July
Aye.
11th?
Aye.
Okay.
Executive session, July 11, 2022, 1 and 2. Mr. Patterson?
Yes, I move that we approve these minutes and not release for public access.
Okay, we have a motion
I'll second.
to approve and not release July 11, 2022, executive session 1 and 2. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the minutes of Monday, July 11th, executive session, I again move to approve and not release for public access.
That's one, we just did that one.
Yeah,
I thought we did both.
There were 2 sessions.
Oh, 2 sessions.
Yep.
Oh,
So-
in session 2 then, that's what I'm
Yep,
talking.
but you're fine because we
We did them both in the
approved them,
first
but we're
motion.
not
We
going
did,
to release them.
okay, fine. I would say that, perhaps the acting town manager could advise us whether these could be released. That's the only thing. But I didn't know the sensitivity of bargaining with other bargaining units, and just figured we'd be safer to just kind of not release them at this stage.
So the session 2, you definitely do not want to release because we're still bargaining that issue.
Okay.
Item number 1, that we could release.
So do you want to break?
Do you want to change your vote? You want to revote?
Yes, I'll be happy to.
Amend the motion?
Make, well, we've moved that for session 1, for the minutes of Monday, June 11th, 2022, that we approve them and release for public access.
Okay, so we have a motion.
I'll second.
Oh, okay.
Second. All those in favor of approving and releasing July 11th, 2022 executive session number 1?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Town manager supplemental report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I want to make note that the police station renovations have gone out to bid. This is a reconfiguration of the interior space at the police department following the relocation of the dispatch offices, which had been in the middle of the first floor and were moved to the basement. So this is a reconfiguration to better lay out that space and create some new offices and move the training room to a more accessible location in the front of the building. So that's going out to bids. The bids will be open September 1st. Staffing and hiring update. Happy to report that 7 police department recruits recently completed the police academy, and that's not a slam dunk. Not everyone does succeed in getting through that, so we're very pleased to be bringing those 7 officers online. I would note there is a lengthy in-service training before they are able to work independently. We have 2 additional recruits that have been hired and will need to complete the police academy before they can take on full duties as a police officer. And as you heard from the fire chief, getting placement in a police academy, it takes some time. So this is welcome progress, these new hires in the police department, but it still leaves us with 10 vacancies. So we've got a lot of work to do. We did recently hire a communication officer. There is another vacancy yet to be filled there. And as of this week, excluding the uniformed police and firefighters, we do still have 17 full-time year-round positions that are vacant. A couple of grant awards to announce. The Conservation Department received $50,000 for the Upper Coonamessett Wetland Restoration Project. This was actually a grant that we didn't have to apply for. It's the result of having, from previous work that was done by Betsy Gladfelter and the Conservation Commission, qualifying the priority status for the Coonamessett River. This was sort of an automatic grant that was awarded as a result of that. Another grant, the Falmouth Housing Corporation received a low-income housing tax credit grant for the elder housing units to be constructed at the intersection of Main Street and Scranton Ave. Lieutenant Governor, as the board is aware, that Lieutenant Governor and other state officials will announce this and 24 other housing awards tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. in Falmouth at 704 Main Street, which is the Falmouth Housing Corp facility. Curbside collection of trash and recycling. The pickups have improved somewhat in the last week, and it remains an ongoing issue where we're not at consistent 100% compliance. The Nauset Disposal has acknowledged that they do need to hire additional drivers. We're continuing to monitor that very closely. The number of complaints that we get from residents has dropped off dramatically since June and the early part of July, but still not out of the woods yet. And lastly, your next meetings as a reminder.
Before you go on, are they able to at least come a day late and get things done on a weekly basis?
So that's gotten better, right. They're doing better at catching up from what was missed the day before, but it does become a tail-chasing exercise because they end up dedicating one truck to catch up from the prior day, which prevents them from getting to completion on that day. So it's getting better, but we're not quite there yet. Your next meeting is August 8th, regular meeting, and followed by a regular meeting August 22nd. We have Saturday, August 27th, scheduled as a strategic planning workshop as well, and another one Saturday, September 10th. And that's it. There are some other, in your report, you have some more specific items that are slotted for your upcoming agenda.
Thank you. Select Board reports.
Well, I'll tell you, since our last meeting, I attended a Friends of Cedar Lake meeting, and Cedar Lake is over in North Falmouth in my new neighborhood, and they're very concerned about the quality of the water there. The plant proliferation is incredible, and the neighborhood, the residents that watch the pond are noticing that there's hardly any fish in there.
It's
Hardly any
freshwater?
yeah, it's freshwater, Cedar Lake. It's right behind the North Falmouth Library. So they're looking for, ways to address it, and they're looking at Mill Pond as an example, and it's inspiring other neighborhoods to start thinking and looking at their own ponds and what they can do. And they've identified the plant, and I forgot the damn name of the plant, but I thought I was going to tell you what it is. But it's a plant that grows in freshwater tanks. It's an invasive species here, but it's like taking over like 90% of the pond, and it looks like broccoli underwater. The best guess is that somebody might have dumped a fish tank into the pond, and that plant just took off. And so the Department of Recreation or Fish and Game or somebody spent almost $1 million building this herring run to get to Cedar Lake so they could spawn, and now there seems to be no herring in the pond at all and no place to grow them. So they've hired an expert to come in and look at what these plants are, and they've identified what the plant is, and they've got an offer that's like $27,000 between the permitting, the actual application, and all the work that goes along with it, just to fix this one species of plant that's in this pond. So it's just another example of these ponds, and the stuff that's happening to them is kind of crazy right now. It's like we're in a new world of having to watch out for our freshwater ponds. So on another note, on Mill Pond, I was lucky enough to have Mark Kasprick meet me over there with a couple of other East Falmouth residents to look at possibilities of improving water flow from the upper reaches of the river down to the lower part through Mill Pond, because some of the neighbors in the neighborhood are thinking that the water in is so blocked that it's prohibiting passage of the water. So Mark's looking into ownership of the land. Possibly it might be state land, whether it's private. He's going to give us some advice on how to move forward to try to fix that problem.
Who's that, Mark who?
Mark Kasbrick. He works in the Conservation Department. And so also this past week, we had the East Falmouth Village Association annual meeting, and thanks to Mr. Zielinski for attending that as well. So it was pretty well attended, but we had a lot of competition with the county fair and other things that were happening that night, so we were down a few numbers. That was my week.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes, I can just report that I attended the Falmouth Affordable Housing Committee on the 21st. We have a new chair, and that's Carrie Walton, and she took over and is doing a great job. A larger than normal number of people who were there who weren't committee members, but there because of just the interest in the affordable housing issues, the crisis that we're really facing, and generally acknowledgement that, we have a serious problem. If we want people here in town, live in our town, replace some of us that are getting very gray with younger people, that really there's an imbalance here that exists and is going to be with us for the long term and is going to cause problems. I would say that we're welcome Kim Fish to give her report. She's, our new housing coordinator. So it's nice to see her joining in on the team to try to figure out how we can move forward, increasing the availability of affordable housing in this community. But it's just as frustrating as ever, but of course we do see some progress. And I think now we really need developers to come forward and propose projects to us because there are funds in the Falmouth Affordable Housing Fund to invest in subsidizing affordable housing. We just need projects, and we're going to need help from ZBA to to get some of these projects moved forward in a reasonable amount of time. So, but it's not going away, and I'm certainly looking forward to the One Cape Summit on the 1st and the 2nd. They've always been good at coming up with perspectives and ideas that kind of help us in strategizing on how we can address this issue. No easy answers, though. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
So last week I attended the MOU signing of the Food Justice Initiative with the Falmouth High School. It's very exciting. So that class will be taught starting this fall. And I'm on the committee for the new search for the Sea Education Association president. And so I probably should have mentioned this in the announcements, but that search is open and they're actively looking for applicants to be the new president of SCA down in Woods Hole.
Awesome. Thank you.
I continue to introduce myself to my committee assignments. I attended the Solid Waste Advisory Committee this past week, and it's consistent with what I said before. I'm trying to do a lot more listening than talking with these new committees, and finding out how the cadence of their meetings go, and meet the members, and try not to be a hindrance to them till I can catch my wings.
Thank you.
I guess I've overlooked my own committees. I attended the Marks Building Committee. They had a meeting at their building, and they're looking over a budget for another CPC grant for the next phase of the work. And then also attended the Beach Committee meeting on Wednesday, and they have a pretty good list of objectives too, so we're going to be hearing from them again pretty soon.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
At the Marks Building, when do we expect Human Services to actually begin to occupy that building?
Oh, the Marks Building Committee's not involved with that really. They're just looking at, rehabbing the outside, the trim work, the historic details they're really looking at.
We're hoping to go out to bid in a couple weeks.
Okay, excellent. Good to hear.
Any ideas for future agenda items? Yes.
Something I just thought of today as we were going over the schedule for town meeting. If we could have a very short presentation on how someone brings an article to town meeting, just the steps for somebody who wanted to do a petition article, perhaps what would be different if a group wanted to petition an article. I'm thinking maybe 10 minutes or less of just how, if someone has an idea, how they would bring that about and eventually bring to the board and then have it voted on at town meeting.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, to Angie's comment, I was looking through the charter for other reasons, and there's not a clear menu, if you will, or checklist on what you do if you want to submit an article, not for committee members, and no place does it ever say the town council is actually supposed to receive these, but that's been the past practice. So I'm not sure there is a script.
That's why I want one.
Yeah, so I think that's probably really an important thing to do, and maybe we'll stop some of the questions that Diane has to field all the time. I do have one item that I would like to see. I'd like to have a status report on where we are in staffing of vacancies on our town staff. I know that we haven't had a human resources manager for a while, but it'd be nice to know where we stand, how well we're recovering from a kind of a deficit of staff members, if that's possible. There's no
Yeah, I've been
rush.
trying to do that, fairly
little by-
frequently.
you have been.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I just wanted an overall perspective, a summary, so.
27 full-time vacant right now, right?
27,
Yep.
yeah. Okay.
But I don't have trending numbers for you. I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know what it was a month
that's
ago.
fine. But approximately 300 total,
Right.
so that's about a 10% vacancy rate. Okay, just trying to get a handle on it.
I would like to get back to the coastal resiliency issue sometime soon. I'd like to discuss whether or not it should be another iteration of the previous committee, or if we should be focusing on staff to implement all the actions that have been already identified, because it really is probably more appropriate for staff. It's actually work that needs to be done rather than identified.
And I'd like to second that, because when I was going through the Woods Hole group, mitigation document, all the time I'm thinking, how do we prioritize? And what do we use as a metric for ranking how things are being? Because when I started seeing the $1 billion of losses, I'm thinking, wow, that's huge. And that's, one storm could create $1 billion worth of losses. And you say, we ought to be planning to do something to try to stop that kind of major loss that could come from a Category 3 hurricane. It just, I feel like we're not using the kind of criteria that we should be to glean through this information and figure out how do we prioritize some of these capital projects.
It's a big list.
It is.
Anything else?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.